And we are live. No, we're not live.
Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust.
And that's how we start the episode.
No, you don't have to put that in there.
No, that's staying in. That's got to be how we open this episode.
Oh, Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust.
Recording in progress.
Recording in progress.
Is he with us?
Grant, you're muted.
Amateur hour.
Pardon me. Scott, you can edit that one out too. God's truth.
Yeah, I know how lucky you all are.
There's the cold open.
Ian went over and tickled its. It was, that's a true story, Doug. You missed that. What's the deal with Ian? Ian, we have people at our desk or at our table. Go away now. Let's talk about this at home.
I already said I went first.
Yeah, you did.
Attention, Jensen.
I know, jeez. I've got two things going on. I'm sorry.
What's so funny?
Ooh, can't pronounce that one. God's sake, John, shut up.
Can't stop coughing. I'm sorry. Yeah, part of us stopped by. What's up?
I'm going to cough.
I'm going to cough.
I got the stare.
Thanks, Grat. Thank God.
You never want any backsplash.
I think you all understood me as well as anybody will ever understand me.
Listeners, this is why we can't have nice things. All right, listeners, welcome to episode 67 of the Plastic Posse podcast. We are super excited to bring you a brand new episode with a lot of great content, a great interview with Alex Clark, and I am so happy to be joined with nearly all of our hosts. Unfortunately, Scott came under the weather at the last moment and turned the keys over to us, which is not a great idea, so we're just going to wing this and see what happens. So I'm going to go around the room and introduce you to who's with me today. Going across the pond to our lovely man in black, Jensen. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. It's nice to be back. It feels like I've been gone for months. But yeah, we're back and you all have to put up with listening to me again.
It's unfortunate, but I guess it's court ordered, so it's we'll deal with it. I guess
it's in the contract. You have to now.
It's in the contract. Yeah, it's in the contract. When we sign a lord, these are the things that we have to accept. So super happy that you're here. Really excited to learn more about what's on your bench because you do have an exciting project going on. More to come from you. So we'll just go down on the screen for me. Grant, how's it going out in California?
I'm doing great. Thanks, JB. Everything's been beautiful out here ever since I got back from Colorado, hanging out with some friends out here, working on a couple of kits that we'll talk a little bit later, but it's been a great time.
Awesome. So next I'll go over to Scott's neighbor in Utah. Doug, how you doing today? Glad you could join us.
I'm doing much better than I did last weekend. I'm getting over a cold, so I'm a little kind of grungy sounding, but that's all good. I'm loving to be down here recording with you guys because I've got 3 grandkids upstairs and it's a madhouse. So it's just really nice to have this break. I'm excited to talk to y'all.
Awesome. TJ, how are you today?
Not too bad. Can't complain. Just finished up my last week in North Carolina, so I am back home full time. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Awesome.
And
we have a special guest with us today, a man of many talents, both on and off the bench, Ian iBones Models. How are you today, good sir?
I am doing great. How are you guys all doing? Doing well?
We're better now that you're here. For our listeners, Ian was kind enough to fly out to Commiesfest, which will be a discussion topic today. He's a man of many talents, and we're going to learn it. So maybe going in opposite order, just to kick off the intro session here. What's on your bench, Ian?
Well, to be honest, and we'll get into that story later, I'm sure, but doing a little repair work on some models. As far as new stuff, I'm working on Mang's 135th scale technical. I've done one of these before with the 23 millimeter AA gun in the bed, but I got a deal on a DEF model BMP1 turret conversion, and I said that's simply too cool to pass up. So getting the final touches down on the pickup truck itself before I start on the conversion. So we'll see how that goes. I'm excited to see where this build ends up and where it takes me.
Outstanding. So sticking with the truck theme, I'll go back over to TJ. What's on your bench?
Well, for the last couple of days, I have been building the FJ43, the Toyota kit from AK that they were kind enough to send us. I have the one with the disc machine gun mounted on the back. It's a pretty neat little kit. I was able to figure out that I think it's a 1982 FJ43. It's somewhere around there because I was looking at some pictures trying to find a color to use because I was going to do one of the box schemes, but I couldn't think of a good way to do it. You guys gave me good recommendations, but I was like, oh, that just sounds like so much work and I don't want to mess it up. I don't really feel like doing a paint mule for it, so I'll just do whatever. So yeah, I got it pretty much in paint now. It's like they call it Dune Beige is the actual Toyota color. So it's not that. It's close, I think. I sprayed some Ad Hoc camo on it and I painted the frame. Frame looks pretty cool. So probably when we're done with this, I'll finish painting the details on the body and maybe even mount it to the frame today. My allergies are really bothering me. So if I sound like crap, that's the reason why. So I apologize in advance. But yeah, that's what I got going on. And I've also started working on the F4, F3 Wildcat from Edward that I got at NAFS last year. I've put together some of the sub-assemblies, triggered all the airplane modelers because not only did it look like I glued all of the sub-assemblies onto one half, but they weren't all perfectly lined up either. And I had to remind people that this is not the first model I've ever built. And also it's just dry fit, just so I could hold it and take a picture with one hand. So yeah, it's still in pieces. After I finish the FJ, I'll probably get back on that because I would like to have it done for my local show, which is from today, 2 weeks. So I think I can pull that off.
Nice. Going back to Utah, Doug, what's on your bench?
Well, I'm actually making progress on something. I've got my Groberhund, my Machine Krieger Groberhund is in process. I've got the legs assembled. These are tricky. There's a lot of seams on them. So there's a lot of texturing I added to try to help eliminate the seams because they're a bear otherwise. So I've got them primed, a few spots I need to clean up, and then I move on from that point. So I'm finally pushing on this Mach-E build. Very excited about that because it'll be fun. It's just, I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes to painting these things. You can do whatever you want because nothing's wrong. Other than that, I'm working on practicing, trying to figure out how to make sandstone that looks like sandstone, not like small scale sandstone, but real sandstone and large scales that can actually tolerate humidity and things like that. It's for reptile stuff. But modeling comes into that because it's all kind of falling back on things I've learned as a modeler that I'm using to make these things. So
awesome. Yeah, definitely look forward to seeing it. And no, feel free to post it in the group, Doug. I think that's great because like you said, it's all modeling related. It's just 1-to-1 in this case. All right, going back over to California, Grant, what's on your bench?
I'm also working on the AK FJ43. Got the chassis done and painted black, which I straight up stole from TJ this morning. I'm going to weather it just like him a little bit. I got the chassis together last night. So hopefully I'll get that painted the next day or so. So that's looking really good. I'm also working on a 1/35th scale. I haven't worked on a 1/35th scale tank in a long time. So I decided to do one for nationals. I'm going to do M1. It's the IP one, which was the in-between Abrams. It basically was an M1 Abrams base body with a modified M1A1 turret with a 105 on it instead of a 120 millimeter. I've been working on that. It's a fun kit. It's, a lot of cutting, a lot of stuff like that. So other than that, it's been fun.
Awesome. And I will go back across the pond. Jensen, I think there's a common theme with some of our hosts here, not to spoil it, but what's on your bench?
Funnily enough, I have the AK FJ43. Mine's one with the SPG 9. I'm not including that on my build though, because I think you're including it on yours. So yeah, I'm going to leave that off, but I'm going to completely fill the back of the truck with like boxes and the spare tire and all sorts of knickknacks. Really nice build. I mean, I didn't know really what to think because it was one of AK's first kits. It's like, it's theirs. It's brand new by them. Didn't know what to expect, but as soon as I got the chassis together, I thought, yeah, this is actually really nice. It fits together really well. There's actually not a lot of cleanup, not a lot of mold lines, and it just fits. Especially with chassis, they can have like issues with alignment and bending and warping, but this one just no issue whatsoever. The instructions, there's a few corrections in the instruction sheet, and it does come with the correction sheet, which is good. Just pay attention to that. But yeah, that build's coming along really well. The build's like 95% there now. It's just getting into that primer stage. But apart from that, I've also been trying to work out what builds to do for Nats because I officially bought my plane ticket the other day. So that's happening. Yay. That's official. So I just, yay! Yay! You're all going to have to be put up with me for another week in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just trying to work out what builds to take there, because transporting models overseas isn't fun. So yeah, just trying to work out what builds for the contest and for display. But yeah, back to being busy.
Awesome. Love it. I'm really excited. For our listeners, you can catch all of the FJ builds. They're going to be posted on the Plastic Posse page or group. We'll be sharing them all. I know TJ and Grant and Jensen have already started posting pictures. I will be in a week or so. And I know Doug and Scott are going to be starting very soon too. So I think it's great. Everybody has a unique build and everybody's approaching it a little differently. It is a great kit. If you are looking to participate, there's no special group, but we'd love to see you participate in the group that we have right now, the Plastic Posse group. I saw Eric Brubaker picked one up and he's going to join us. But if you need to get an FJ, you can go domestically to Microworld Games, or you can go abroad to AK's direct website. I'm actually thinking of putting in a big order because the Unimogs just came out as well. And those are absolutely fantastic. So I think I'll pick those up or even wait for the Land Rovers. So AK's doing a lot of great soft skins. So check them out. As I mentioned, Microworld Games, and then also AK's direct site. And if you order more than $200, it's free shipping. So that's the game changer.
Yeah, I'd like to throw in something real quick about the kit that I really liked, and I just want to throw this out there. It gives you the option to do a left turn, a right turn, or straight forward with the front wheels. So it's really cool. I mean, you don't really get that very often with a kit. So it's one of those neat little tricks that they did.
Awesome. And I'll just round out. On the bench, as I mentioned, I don't have the FJ. I'll be starting it soon. I'm actually going on holiday to the Caribbean, so I will be away from the bench. I know, really rough. But in terms of what I'm working on, I'm almost done with the giant OI from Tacom, the 150-ton mammoth. So it's actually coincidental that Ian's here because he sent me a figure for it, which is a Marine Corps guy leaning up against it perfectly. So I'm almost done with the vehicle. And then when I get back, I'll put a little base and then also put that gentleman on. And then another small project I have is the Rubicon's LVT. It's for a future publication, but it's painted in blue and modulated. So it might trigger some folks online, but I think I'm enjoying coming out. And for our listeners, if you want to have an idea what I'm going for, look at Adam Wilder's LVT. He did the LVT4 with the M5 Stuart turret on top, modulated it blue. And ever since the first moment I saw it, I was like, I have to replicate that scheme because it's so striking. So trying to go for something like that. But otherwise, it's just been busy at the bench, then busy off the bench, which we'll talk about later with Commiesfest, because I had the opportunity to host almost all these fine gentlemen on the screen here at my house. And we'll get to it later.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Plastic Posse podcast is sponsored by Tankcraft, makers of the highest quality cutting mats for your workbench. Tankcraft cutting mats are heavy-duty, self-healing, come in 2 awesome sizes, and have World War II tanks and aircraft blueprint-style drawings on them. Spread out your next build on an olive green M4 Sherman or a Dunkelgelb King Tiger. They've got aircraft too. Check out all the designs and range of unique modelling tools at tankcraft.com. That's TANKRAFT.com. And remember, Plastic Posse podcast listeners can use the code POSSE15 to get 15% off your first order.
Before we get to that, we have a few segments, one of which is our first discussion topic. And I'm going to turn it over to TJ to lead that.
Yeah, the first thing we wanted to talk about, which is fitting because, John, you posted it on our main page right after Commiesfest, was motivation. And I know for me, spending the weekend with you guys and going to a show, my motivation to build was just like off the charts, right? I couldn't, as much as I loved being there in Colorado, which I did, I could not wait to get back home so I could work on something. And the way it worked out is I got home Monday evening and I took Tuesday off because I had to drive back down to North Carolina for my last couple days. So I got Tuesday off pretty much all day to work on models. And that's exactly what I did. For me, what motivates me is just going to a show and seeing my friends. Both of those things probably push my desire to want to model higher than anything else. You know, seeing cool pictures online helps too. Finding a random picture in a book, or there's an Instagram account called the Signal Corps Archives, and they post just old like photos from the Signal Corps from World War II. A lot of stuff you just don't see a lot. And I'll see something like that. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I need to build one of those, or I need to find a kit of that. I mean, that's what motivates me. I'll start with you, Ian. What gets you motivated to build?
Well, much like you, TJ, I mean, honestly, having gotten back from Denver and seeing all the fantastic work that, my friends put out, seeing a lot of the work that was just on the tables at Commies, like we were lucky enough that, Brian Kruger was, there, and his work's always inspirational, even if you don't build machining Krieger stuff, a lot of the stuff that he does, is, definitely translates over to, your 135th, 148th type of kits, your historical miniatures. But not only that, but seeing his, for those of you that don't know, I'm a huge fan of, World War II Soviet armor, and Brian's got a fantastic display of fictional and real Soviet heavy tanks. And I was lucky enough to see some of them at NATS last year, and he brought it as, I believe it was a group display, I think is what it was. But he had, a good 7, 8 of them sitting there, and they're some of my favorite builds ever. So seeing that, I was itching to get home and start putting paint to plastic.
What about you, Jensen? I know motivation's been a little hard to come by for you lately, but it seems like that's kind of changing.
It has. Ignoring life events when it comes to actually modeling, I'm going to kind of echo what's been said already. Like, granted, watching all you guys have such an amazing time in Denver, and when I eventually managed to dry my eyes for all the crying of not being there, there was so much modeling going on over that weekend that I could see, and I was just like, damn, I need to be a part of that. And one thing, obviously, good friends of the podcast and of us, Jackson and Zach, they didn't go either. So a lot of the time while you were all at that event in Denver, we were just in Discord chatting a lot, and just talking about doing scale modeling and stuff is a massive help. Granted, I didn't want to do any, and I've not done any for a couple of months now. Granted, that's returned, but just talking about them guys doing modeling, it's like, it's getting me to really want to do it. So yeah, just sitting around and talking with other modelers about projects that are upcoming or projects they want to do or stuff they've got on the bench or techniques. Like Jackson will always ask me, how do you modulate this? Or what would you do first, chipping or a pin washing? As he's asking me, and it's just like, I do really want to do this. So just talking modeling really helps me want to get to the bench and model. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah, I'm disappointed that you and the other children weren't there that weekend because, John, I'm going to go over to you. I think this topic was your idea. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm interested to see your take on it.
Yeah, I think I share a lot of sentiment that's been shared already, that I believe the community is the greatest motivator for me. I'd like to think it's a photograph or, a new kit or a new paint or something. And certainly those have a dealings with motivation, but I'll echo exactly what you said, Jensen and TJ. From a online standpoint, we had our first Zoom session in a long time this past week. And I think it was cool. When you sit down with your friends online, it's incredibly motivating. And seeing some of the chat groups, the green room from our time in the 48 and 48 is still alive and people post there. That's motivating, but it's hard to replicate what can be done in person. Life happens in person. Going to a show is beyond motivating. It's unfortunate that Jensen and Doug couldn't make it, but I'm glad they at least felt the effects of it. But in person, seeing Brian Krieger's work, seeing Steve Baker's aircraft, Jeremy Moore showed up with probably the most beautiful Sherman I've ever seen. Sherman Firefly whitewashed. I think I took a dozen pictures of it alone. I'm already thinking like, what can I do a whitewash just like that? And then you have Brian Kreiner, who brought the natural metal finishes of the P40, the MiG, and then the DO335. He also had his large P60 there in a very faded and weathered patinaed OD, which was incredible. And looking at those, it just kind of puts things into perspective around where you potentially want to go as a modeler, what influences you, what inspires you, what motivates you. They're kind of all wrapped up in that moment. And then also got to mention John Everett as well, non-traditional subjects such as the Epithecus. It was gorgeous. And again, non-traditional in a sense of planes, cars, tanks, but seeing his Epithecus and then also the quad jumper there too, that was completely scratch built. It's crazy. And it's really fortunate to know those kind of people. And then even being inspired and motivated by listeners. We had the opportunity to meet with Theron, Adam, Josh Buck was there, who's more than just a listener in that case, but there were a lot of folks there that came up and shook our hand, said hi, and told us, love the content, keep it going. And that's motivating, even though the podcast isn't directly like us building models, it's still hobby related, hobby adjacent that influences and pushes us towards finishing stuff. So I think, my long-winded answer is everything. But most importantly, the community, having those conversations, sharing information, sharing photos, and, positive encouragement too. There's there's no room for anything else in my mind. Keeping it light, keeping it fun, and keeping it forward is the way I think of it. So yeah, that's my perspective.
Doug, what motivates you the most?
Oh man, that's kind of rough. There's all kinds of things that can inspire me. Sometimes, being somebody that's really down with Star Wars, just watching a show will make me want to build something. Unfortunately, sometimes it's something. Recently on The Mandalorian, I got to see a bunch of TIE interceptors and I can't get the kit, so that's unfortunate. Just going on YouTube and looking up builds for things, or the actual like if it's armor, if it's aircraft, those things get me kind of pumped up to build something. And then I look at the models and think, how would I do this? If you ever watch footage of the mock loop in Wales, I kind of want to build an F-15 like I've seen in there, or even the F-35s I've seen in there. Those are things that get me excited.
Going back, I think you might know the answer to this. If I'm not mistaken, that's the first time we've seen a TIE interceptor since Return of the Jedi in a movie, right? They haven't been in anything else.
Other than, I'm not sure if I think they've popped up in like Rebels or something like that. But no, Rebels is a little too early for them. Yeah, I'm not sure. I've never seen them anywhere else.
Yeah, but canonically, they're like post Battle of Yavin, right? That's like a new design by the time. Yeah,
I was pretty stoked to see him though. I was geeking out. That first 10 minutes of that episode had me just going crazy. And I want Bo-Katan's ship. I want a model of that. Do you get me? If you want to get me motivated, give me that model and I'll build it.
Yeah. Oh, damn it! What is that thing called? Yeah, it's got a name too. They're cool. I think it's almost like it's a Mandalorian ship. I don't think she might have one of the only ones left, but I think like in Rebels, you see a bunch of those.
Oh, it's the Gauntlet.
Yes. That's it. Yeah. They're cool. Yeah. That's a neat design. And to round things out, Grant, I'm going to go to you. I mean, same question as everyone else. What gets you motivated? Where do you find motivation?
I mean, you guys have all hit it 100%. It's the group, the people, the contests, the fun times. I'm a big Brian Kreiner fanboy. Is DO335 to me is just one of those models that is just one of the best. The Sherman Firefly that JB brought up. Oh, that kit was 8 years old, and it is probably the most beautiful whitewash camouflage I have ever seen on a model. And I don't know if JB thinks the same way, but the whitewash is just what made that kit. It was so perfect and in such a great way. It was fabulous, and I see Ian stuff, and I'm seeing JB stuff, and I'm seeing TJ stuff, and there was stuff there that was just fantastic. Going to the Plastic Posse podcast page, motivates me. Just seeing what people are dropping every day. Seeing the quality of what work that I'm seeing from this group of people is phenomenal. I mean, Lebanese T-62s, you're seeing, and I'm going to bring it up a little bit later. You see Alex Clark, who's going to be a guest on here. He did a 1/144 scale aircraft, which is phenomenal. And it's so tiny and beautiful. There's stuff like that. There's the FJs that are going up, all this other stuff these people are doing. It's just, that motivates the heck out of me. All right. So we talked about motivation. Let's talk about some of the highlights that we've all seen on our Facebook page. Let's start out with Jensen. What did you see?
I've really enjoyed our good friend Zach Grizzle. His US tractor, a Thunder Models tractor, he's really nice. I know he's been really lacking motivation recently, but he's had a sudden burst of motivation to get stuff done, and he's been working on that, and I really like the paint job on it. It's nicely weathered. I mean, the weathering of the dirt and dust he's got on the tires, that's really nice. Especially, I really like his oil staining he's done. So it's aged oil stains that obviously gather dust, but it's also a fresh oil stain on top of it that's kind of shiny. He's done that really well. He's kind of nailed that effect. And he's got it on a nice scene with a destroyed SDKF said something half track that is destroyed. It's ripped to bits. It's rusty. It's just really good. And it's great to see him like doing these projects again, because a bit like myself, he's not done an awful lot of the bench for a while. So yeah, it's a cracking build. It's really, really, really nice.
Really, I like the way it's like pushed. The says pushed off the side of the road, and the tractors. Yeah, it's really nice. JB, what about you?
I got to go with Eric DeGleish's Tiger One. I'm a sucker for Tiger Ones. I'm a sucker for whitewash, and also want to give a little congratulatory statement to him. He entered at the Sword and Lance show hosted by the Darlington Military Modeling Society, and he was awarded bronze. So want Want to definitely give him a shout out for a job well done. And also just a really nice piece. It's a Tiger One, looks like a mid with a nice patinaed whitewash, chipped Zimmerit, and then he's got some dudes walking next to it. So I actually really like the tree on the base too. It's got some sweet, fall foliage, and overall just really well done. And I just want to give him kudos for that, and then also congratulations to his award at the local show. So good job, Eric.
Yeah, Eric, great job. Way to go with the award also. TJ.
I'm going to have to go with Dan Broker's 1/16 scale Tiger. Like everything else Dan does, it's amazing. He was showing some pictures of the turret. Yeah, he added Zimmerit with green stuff, I think, which, I mean, hats off to you, because I don't think green stuff is probably the best material to work with as far as like doing Zimmerit and stuff with. And I was right on all the welds, and they just, I mean, God, they look perfect. Anyone that's seen his work in person, which I've been fortunate enough to see a handful of things that he's done in person, it's amazing. I can't wait till he puts paint on it, because it's just going to be just phenomenal. Yeah, that's my pick. Sorry, Ian, I know that was on your list too, but this is our podcast, damn it, so I get it.
Oh, that's great. Hey, Doug, what about you?
I keep talking about dioramas, vignettes, bases when we talk about these things. And here's another one that stood out to me. Patrick Van Gils, he's a scale modeler. He shared his base. He's working on a base for his Stug 3. It's Kharkov 1943. And this base it's a real simple idea. There's not like a lot on like coming up out off the base, but the rubble on it, every single little brick in 35th scale has its own unique damage, its own, I mean, it's all over the ground, and they've kind of been pressed down in the dirt. There's a few busted pipes laying around, and just the detail in every little brick. I just find this fascinating, what he was able to do. The coloration, the damage, every brick is an individual in this picture and these pictures, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, that is a real nice one. I know exactly which one you're talking about. All right, special guest Ian, what do you have?
Well, I am a huge Alex Clark fanboy, and he recently posted the Sweet Models 1/44th scale ME109F, I believe it is. I think it kind of looks like one of those tropical schemes, but scrolling through the group, I came across, because Facebook does that strange thing where on a post with a bunch of pictures, it'll like a bunch of people start liking one, and it almost makes that picture itself, and that's the only thing that you see. And then you can click to the actual post. And I remember thinking, Alex Clark does a bunch of 1/72nd scale stuff. I haven't seen him do a 1/48 scale kit before. And I click on the post, and it's tiny. It's 1/44th scale. It's sitting here next to a bottle of XF59, but the guy made it look like it was a much, much bigger kit. He's got it all. He's got an exhaust stain that looks in scale and correct on the thing. It's got chipping on the wing root. It's got paint distressing. He's even got on the drop tank on the center line a bunch of oil streaks that are like, I don't know how he does it, man. I do not know how that guy does it, but phenomenal.
Yeah, he's a fantastic scale modeler. And it's like he said in the interview, and actually said in the post also, that he wanted to do an aircraft this year, so he did an aircraft. And I'm like, okay, this is just ridiculous. Come on, 144 scale. So it's an amazing build, Alex. You did a fantastic job.
What's even more wild to me is the fact that the masking on the canopy looks good, because I can't even get it to look right in 1/32nd scale, let alone 1/44th.
Yeah.
You're with it, Alex.
Yep, he is. It is fantastic. His work is just phenomenal. And later on, you guys will be able to hear a little bit more about when me and Scott talk to him. It's a great interview. You guys will enjoy it. So I'm going to go with mine. Something I posted today as a gentleman named Alex DeCamp, who our Mach-A modelers know very well. Works with Lincoln Wright, does some stuff with them. He also does 1/35th scale. He did a little bit of a diorama base that he's been working on for a while. He took the last 3 weeks off, but he's been working on this little diorama base. It's basically a road sign on the side of the road with a telephone pole, but it's probably some of the really nicest landscape that I've seen on anybody's page. He does some really good concrete work on it, and the sign is beautiful. The telephone is beautiful. I can't wait to see what figures he puts on it. Alex is a really nice guy. Really, really nice guy. He's done he actually did some decals that were approved for Maquet. So hope to see those eventually. Did some really great work. So that's what the highlights. I'm going to push it over to Jensen now to talk about some upcoming shows.
Indeed. There is quite a list of upcoming shows and events happening very, very shortly. So to start with, we have the annual Indie Roscoe Turner Invitational Contest and Swap Meet, and that's on Saturday, April 15th, 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. Ian did a little jig then. He was very happy we mentioned that one. We have the Northern Virginia Modelers Model Classic 2023, and that's on Saturday, April 15th at Fairfax High School in Fairfax, Virginia. We have the MFCA show on May 5th and 6th at the Radisson Hotel in Philadelphia East. Madison Hotel, Philadelphia East. We have the AMPS International show, May 5th and 6th. We have the San Diego Model Expo on Saturday, June 3rd at the San Diego Air and Space Museum. IPMS Nationals, of course, in San Marcos, Texas, August 2nd till the 5th. That's the big one. IPMS San Diego Model Expo in El Cajon, California, June 3rd. IPMS Orange Con Model Show.
Buena Park.
There we are, on October 1st.
I'm actually really proud of you for getting El Cajon. I was waiting for El Cajon to come out differently.
Only because, as Grant was doing his pick, I quickly Google translated, how do you pronounce this? Because I would have said, we have a model show in El Cajon in California. That is the list of upcoming shows and events for most of this year. If any more pop up, we will add them to the next show.
El Cajun, California.
El Cajun.
The Triple P Mac Group Build is sponsored by Bases by Bill. Bases by Bill specializes in making beautifully crafted wooden custom display solutions for scale models. Built by modelers for modelers, these premium quality display cases and innovative base designs are available for just about any model and size. Their custom sized display bases ranging from 4 to 30 inches provide the perfect foundation for dioramas and vignettes. And remember, if you don't see what you need, just ask. Chances are they can customize the perfect solution for you. Check out basesbybill.com and see their new custom display products for busts and figures. Use the code POSSE15 at checkout to apply a 15% listener discount to your order. Bases by Bill for all your model display needs.
TJ, how's that Mac build coming along we've got?
It's going pretty good. So I remember, I think the last time we did one of these, it's been, by this point, almost a month. And there was only like a week in between those two recordings. So not a whole lot had happened. Since then, there's been a lot of good stuff going on. Some of the things I want to highlight are Lynn Young is working on a Hornus. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's doing the pilot suit for it, and it's pretty cool. It's an old Ditto kit, so he's discovering that they're old. But once they build up, they're quite nice. And of course, we got to talk about Bill Huffman. Bill Huffman's just, I have it written down as ridiculousness because it is. He's a wizard. So he's been putting that shop that he gave us a tour recently to good use. And he scratch built some sort of little one-wheeled robot guy to go with his little raccoon suit and all this other just nonsense going on. It's really, really cool. Craig Flynn has been posted his Mel, which looks really nice. It's kind of got its arm out. I think it's holding a bird, or a bird had landed on it. It's pretty neat. And we got to give a tip of the hat to our buddy Steve Munsell. He's been working on the Sturmkaffer, and it's pretty cool. It's awesome to see Steve modeling. I know Steve does not model as much as he would like to, but it seems like we got him going with some Mac. So yeah, head on over to the group. If you're not a member, just go ahead and join and see all the cool stuff. And here in a couple months, you'll see a lot of these on the table in Texas. All right. So with that, let's go over to Doug with a little bit of feedback.
All righty. Well, I'd like to start out with this one. This is from Drew Oliver. Well, he was one of many to reach out and congratulate JB on his Mooseru Cup win at Heritage Con. So, JB, what do you think about that?
Oh, well, thank you so much, Drew. I really appreciate it. You know, the Mooseru was a really fun and casual, I'd say, event. I wouldn't even say competition. And it was really nice to see all the podcasters, participate, with exception to the Mojo. So just calling it out there, Dave, you lobbied for this. And
they participated, but like some people, they were not able to finish. I mean, I don't know who would ever do that. That's got to be some sort of loser that wouldn't finish the Mooseru build. Yeah, that's weird.
I guess they pulled a Triple P 2022. But I'm not going to say all jokes aside, because the Moosaroo, the jovial nature of the event, really got to thank IPMS Hamilton and the crew up there, Lightspeed Global as the sponsor, being able to give these kits to the various podcasts, seeing each of the people build and finish it. And I know Dave brought his to Heritage Con, so it was finished on the table there. So kudos to him, and that kind of rounds out the team. Everybody who participated, high marks, really nice work. I believe I saw them all. Barry Bindinger even joined into the fray, and he's a figure painter. So bottom line, super fun little event. So happy that we could all build a common subject, share the joy in it, and then major kudos to the folks up at IPMS Hamilton. Again, can't thank you enough for sponsoring this, Lightspeed Global, and the awesome show of Heritage Con itself. It's unfortunate it fell on the Sunday following Commiesfest here in Denver, but super grateful to hear what your show did. The fire marshal saying no more people allowed in the building. I know that's a problem, but it's a good problem for the hobby. And seeing the amount of models on the table, I think they crested 1,000 models on the table. They had, I believe, almost 3,000 people through the door, if not more. So incredible stats. It was nice that the Moosaroo results were showcased there. They went through all of the entries, which was really nice. And again, it was a super fun event, and just can't thank them enough. So yeah, that's what I think. It was fun. It was a slammer build, and can't wait to see what we do next year.
Knocked it out in a week, right?
Yeah, just about. I think I spent more time masking than doing anything else on the build. And just a super little gorgeous kit. I finished it the way I thought I was going to push it a little bit more, but the LP11 and the aluminum paint, I thought a Chris Payne's gray wash and a few other little minor tweaks here and there was that's just the way I like to look at it. And man, it's I really liked it. I liked painting it so much that I bought a Razor Crest to paint natural metal, because I just really liked how it came out. Looked at a lot of references, and yeah, it was cool. I was super happy. Very fortunate. Tritone to aluminum. I'm ready for the next natural metal finish.
Is there any? Has there been any discussion about the subject of next year's Moosaroo Cup build?
I have not heard anything. I'm sure there will be a lobbyist amongst the podcast group, but they've done sci-fi, they've done aircraft. Who knows? It could be a ship, could be a car, could be armor, could be a figure. Honestly, it could be anything. I'm not really sure what they're going to choose, and I'm excited for it. I think there's maybe a little debate on our side on who's gonna participate next year, but certainly we're ready for the event and super excited for it. Dinosaur, yeah. We might have to list John Everett to be our celebrity shout out for that one and get him in.
I'll just go hang out with him a lot. Like whoever gets it. I would love to build a dinosaur, first of all, but whoever gets it and just needs to go camp at his house every weekend and have him show him all the tricks. Yeah. Because that dude's a master.
For sure.
All right. We had a question from Tyler Zarnicki. He loves the podcast. He wants to know how to participate in our group builds. And we've talked about the Mach-Egg group build. TJ, what do they need to do to join up?
Just look for the group on Facebook. Just search for, I think it's under Plastic Posse Podcast, Mac/SF3D group build. It'll pop right up. You should find it and just apply to join. That's it. And when you get in there, I think there's a post with the rules, which are rather loose. They're more like guidelines than actual rules. That's if you want to display it with us at Texas. I mean, you don't have to. The group isn't just for that. It's also just a good repository of a bunch of cool Mac builds. So yeah, that's it. That's all you have to do. Super simple.
Cool deal. We had a young man named Cash Treby. He wrote us. He said, I've been doing models for almost 3 years now. I'm 13 at the time, and I love your show. 13. Wow. I started listening just after the Night Shift episode. I love the content. It really does show how fun and laid back the hobby and people are in the community. And maybe you could come down to Australia June 15th to 17th. Here's another model show to shout out. June 15th to 17th for the Melbourne Model Expo. I think you'd be amazing people to make it even better. It's my first show, and I hope you guys can make it. Well, Cash, I would love to go to Australia, but that's not in the cards this year, but would be fun.
Well, Cash, that would be a great time. I'd love to go down to Australia, see some of our good friends like Lincoln, Sam Dwyer, the guys down there. That would be a fun time. 20 hours on a plane. I don't know about that, but that's definitely on the bucket list. And hey, keep it up. keep up building and post some of your stuff on the webpage so you can see it. I want to take a look at your stuff and we'll, go from there. Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo that, Cash. Thanks so much for reaching out. Please share your work. We'd love to be there. While you're at the show, definitely run into Sam Dwyer. Great guy. He is
Sam Dwyer.
The Sam Dwyer. My apologies. The Sam Dwyer
From the book.
From the book. He'll be at the Melbourne show, I'm sure. And he's a great person to talk to and become friends with. And he'll certainly walk you around and show you the ropes of the show. And be sure to check out his beautiful work too. Now, I will say we're going to reach out to Gulfstream and see if we can get a partnership with them and they can loan us a G650 to maybe attend. So, who knows with the Plastic Posse? We're open to all sponsorships and we'll be approaching them and some of our global travel agencies as well to see if we can get hooked up with some accommodations. But yeah, thank you so much, Cash, for reaching out. Really appreciate it.
He also threw out a little kit recommendation. He loved the Tamiya 148 Sturm Tiger, and I can echo. I haven't built that one, but it's just hard to go wrong with a Tamiya 48 scale kit. Those things are just wonders. They're fun to build. They go together easy, and I love those kits.
Rick Lawler loved it too. So you have some really good choice, Sam. Good job.
Well, the last one I'm going to read, this is kind of Cliff Notes from RK. He wrote us quite a letter. It was really, really appreciated, but I had to break it down a little bit. He said he was away from our show for a while. He jumped back in when we discussed scale mixing. He says for a long time, scale determined a lot of his purchasing choices. As a team, he was 135th Armor. He switched to 172nd scale aircraft, later on back to 48th aircraft in his late 20s. He says, in my brain, my storage space, whatever what might be at any given point, was somehow infinite for small models, but then it shrinks down to a singularity whenever a slightly bigger scale kit comes near it. I've been modeling on and off for 35 years now. If I kept everything I ever built, I'd be under a mountain of crappily painted garbage. I think the oldest finished kit I have is about 12 years old. Most are no more than 4 or 5. So it shouldn't bother me, but it does. A little nod to Faith No More there. Why am I even thinking about what I'll be doing with my kits years from now? I should be enjoying the build and not the finished collection, right? So his question for us and the community at large is, what happens to your models once they're done, and do you even care? What do you guys think?
So my builds, they go in the display case, which is actually full now. I will find places for them. Thing is, with the display case being full, I will just find a way to get rid of builds that no longer meet my standard, to sound a bit snobby. Good thing about what we do is we trade a lot of our builds amongst our group and that. So I'm happy to give my builds away even if I don't get anything, because it clears space in the cabinet. I mean, I've got 5 of JB's builds in my cabinet, so he has plenty of space now. But yeah, it's not really a problem if there are builds that other people like and they want it, they can just have it, because it means I've got more space to fill up with new builds.
I do pretty much the same thing as Jensen. I have 3 cabinets. 2 of them are almost completely full. The other one is getting more full almost every day. But as Jensen mentioned, and I'm sure some of these other guys will mention, I give my builds away. I know Scott, who's not with us, he has a whole wing in his display area of my builds. I think he has more of my Star Wars builds than I actually have. I used to sell them. I don't really do that anymore. A friend of mine has bought a number of kits that I built, and he was like, hey, I want that. I'll give you, really like almost nothing for it. I was like, yeah, sure, I don't care, take it. But now I'll just kind of give them away. I've given some to family members, give them to you guys. We started doing that maybe after the first Nats. I know Scott took some of my stuff home, and I know after this, like we did it last year. I don't know if anyone got anything in mind. I know this year I'm bringing stuff that I will make sure people can have, and I know I've got 2 of John's pieces. I have 1 of Jensen's pieces. I now have 1 of Ian's pieces, so hopefully I can get 1 from everyone else at some point. And that's what I do.
I tried to steal your Warhammer figure, but you caught me.
Which one did I bring?
The Nationals, you brought the
Terminator guy?
Yeah, Terminator.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So those I probably won't give away because I actually
you played them.
Actually use those.
That's why I wanted it.
Pretty much anything else is free to a good home. But yeah, my gaming minis, I do like to hold on to those because every once in a while I do actually like to put them out on the table.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I got 2 cabinets, one's full, one's getting there. Like TJ, I give them away. People say, hey, I like this. Here you go. Scott like the rest of us, has a couple of mine. Some other people out there have them. So, I don't like to throw stuff away, but sometimes you have to. But, other than that, I just, like I say, pass them out.
Yeah, I'd echo the same thing. I have 3 display cabinets, but, more of my pieces have found their way to different homes over the last couple of years. And I enjoy it. It's a good way to share. And, we even talked about, how do we display them even in our own homes? Because I take pride in a lot of the work I have from other people. Sam Dwyer, Jonathan Anderson, iBones just delivered one. I think it's really cool. And it was really great this past weekend having the opportunity to bring them out and share them with the modelers who visited, who didn't get a chance to go to nationals. Or haven't had an opportunity to see these people work in person. So I think it's, we spent hours just talking about people's work. We brought Jensen's M3 Lee out, Dan Brooker's Panther 2, Doc's 8-wheeled armored car, Sam Dwyer's King Tiger, Dan Brooker's mentioned his Panther 2 already, but there's a lot of work to be shared. And that's one reason I like to have other people's models in my case. And I spend more time talking about their models than mine. And that's the way it should be. And it was a lot of fun.
I would agree with that. I, as you mentioned, I've given you guys some of my builds. For me, the actual build itself, the fun part. And, kind of in my opinion, once you get the pretty pictures of it and you post it to Facebook, that model is forever mortal, no matter what happens to it, no matter what TSA does to it. It's, something that you can just at that point give it away. The T28 I was doing, Logan Hansen up in Wisconsin actually was the guy that sold me that kit, and he asked for it, and I said, you read my mind, my guy, because you're getting that kit when it's done, and I go up to nationals next year. So, I'd agree, giving it to your friends and having it forever live in the Bonani Institute of Art or, the Howler Archives, it's always nice to immortalize there as well.
I have a small shelf of Star Wars, more sci-fi stuff on just above my model bench. And I have another shelf in this room that I keep the armor I've done in a few old airplanes. For a while there, I was giving away so many of the Star Wars kits that I built that I'd look at my shelf and I just think I don't have anything to show anybody that comes in here. I want to show them what I built, but it's all gone. So I have made it a point to keep a few of these, but I mean, a lot of them are kind of earmarked for someone else anyway, but I'll build more to replace them. Eventually, I'm going to have a nice display in my basement. Once that main rec room is finished, I'll have a nice display area. But until then, this is what I do. It's all in my room. That is all that we've got to share today for feedback. It's not that there wasn't more. As a matter of fact, if there was, if we shared everything people talk to us about, we'd be hours on feedback alone. So we appreciate everybody that has contacted us, that's given us feedback, that's just shared their work. We love it. So remember, you can send your feedback and suggestions to us via email at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com or share things directly to the Plastic Posse Facebook page. And we'd love to hear from you and love to see what you're doing.
All right, everybody. Next is our interview with Alex Clark, a fantastic 1/72nd scale modeler. And as we heard today, a 1/144th airplane modeler, the overachiever that he is. We had a great conversation. You're really going to enjoy this interview. And here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the posse, this is a very special interview for me. This gentleman has been an inspiration in the 1/72nd scale armor for many, many, many years. I know that we really enjoy his work here at the posse, and I am lucky enough to have two of my compadres from the posse here. I've got Scott.
How you doing?
And I got JB.
Hello. Welcome.
And our esteemed guest, Alex Clark. How you doing, Alex?
I'm fine. Thanks, Grant. And hi, guys. Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's great to have you. It's great to have you. We've been talking about this one for a while. We really are interested. Oh, no, trust me. We've been talking about it. It's going to be great. So I'm going to start off with a very simple question. We ask everybody when we start. How did you get involved in modeling, and why 1/72nd scale?
That's probably around 8 or 9, I think. And my parents bought me a Boeing 747 kit for Christmas. I think it was an Airfix one. I spent some time with my dad. We put it together. I say we. I think he bought it more for himself, but we worked on it. I just remember the strong smell of polystyrene cement, and I think he got it all over his fingers and over the glazing and the fuselage. But it was fun. We built it up and didn't paint it. I think it was all molded in white. Put the markings on it, and that was it. And I just remember thinking, wow, it's amazing. You can get this box of bits and turn it into this little replica of something real. So I was immediately just hooked. I thought, this is great. So from then on, I pretty much spent all my pocket money every week. Airfix kits were extremely common in the UK. Literally every newsagent and small shop seemed to have some selection of them, even some in the old bags. I don't know whether any of you remember, sometimes they'd come in little polythene bags, which is quite quaint when you think about it now.
Yeah.
But so I spent my money on those, and literally I built almost anything. It was just whatever took my fancy at the time. So aircraft and armor, probably the most, simply because of the availability of them. Ships, submarines, a couple of dinosaurs, I think, space shuttle, some sci-fi cars, pretty much anything, and just took it from there. I then started to think, well, I wasn't quite satisfied. They didn't look like the box because I wasn't painting them. So I started buying some paints, and Airfix enamels were a thing back then, long gone, I think now. Smelly little tins of enamel, which were even smaller, I think, than the Humbrol ones. I think they're really narrow and tiny. So I bought some brushes, started painting them, and that really just set me on the road. I think the road to doing the small scale armor is quite a gradual thing. I think for quite a while I was just building things out of the box. I built, and I was tending to focus sort of on Second World War aircraft and armor. Scale wise, I built various scales. So I think I built a 32nd scale Airfix M3 Grant, I think it was. But I think because I was quite young at the time, I tended to focus on the cheaper kits, that I had more room for. So 76 scale armor, 72nd scale aircraft. But I did build a few other scales as well. So I had, I think, a 48 scale aircraft and 32nd scale Matchbox Messerschmitt 109, which I was quite pleased with. It seemed huge to me at the time. And I even bought the Airfix 24 scale Spitfire. That was my sort of mega. I was so pleased with that kit that I got hold of that. It took me a long time to save up for it, but so I built that as well. And then I think just really over time, as I became more interested in detailing, so I started to add little bits of detail here and there. I found a couple of old Airfix modelling manuals at school, in the school library, and they're quite sort of old-fashioned, I guess, if you looked at them now, but they were quite good. They had little plans in them, and they ran through how to do a little conversion or a semi-scratch build. So I started just sort of following that, really. And I think as I did that more and more, it naturally made me narrow down my interests, because you can't really, delve deeply into everything. It's really as simple as that. So I think armor then started to sort of become more and more of a thing for me. I did dabble actually a little bit with flying aircraft, like just the rubber band powered ones. I think I was probably about 11 then, and I had a wooden Spitfire, and it was like a pre-printed balsa wood thing. So you cut the bits out, glue the frame together, cover it with the tissue paper, and then there's some, like, I think it was called dope that you paint over it, and it sort of hardens and makes it waterproof and so on. And I remember building that and thinking, this could be my new hobby. Took it out onto a field, thinking, well, I'm not near any cars, not near any houses, people, nice and safe. So I wound it up really tight and then let it fly, thinking, into the sky, brilliant. And of course, it just shot off, sharply curved, and then nosedived into the ground. So that was my short-lived dabbling in non-static modelling. And I returned swiftly to the plastic kits. But it was at that time, actually, that I got more tools. So that was when, when I was building that, my mum and dad bought me a scalpel, which, thinking I was probably about 11, probably wouldn't have done that with my children when they were 11. But I don't think health and safety was such a thing back then. So yes, that's when I got my first scalpel. I still got the blade for that. No, not the blade, sorry, the handle. Yeah, it's all yellowed and old now, but I still got it. And I think that's really helped sort of cut my skills a little bit, when I got these extra tools, and then went with these Airfix modelling manuals. Yeah, and just took it from there. And I think really for me, probably the pinnacle build, I joined IPMS by that time as a junior member. So again, I was in an environment where lots of people were very encouraging, and to junior members, it was great. And I bought a 48 scale Messerschmitt 109. It was an Airfix one, I think. And I did a cutaway. So half of it was like, just a skeleton essentially. And then I think it was in the late 80s, I took that to the IPMS Nationals, and I won national champion for juniors. So That really was a great boost, at the time. And then for a few years after that, that's just, just sort of went off. But really, armor then for some reason just, seemed to be the one thing that took over. That was like probably the last aircraft I built. And then I went into the usual age-old story of university. Went off and for 4 years, modeling just didn't really register. I mean, not that I wasn't interested, but everything else just comes along. It's a massive experience. It's quite interesting because then after I'd finished university, I spent a couple of months at home just with my parents because I was going to go on for a PhD course that I'd been accepted for. I thought I'll go to the model shop near where my parents live. I thought I haven't been in for years. I used to go in when I was young. So I went in and they had a Matchbox 72nd scale Russian T-80 tank. And it was brand new at the time, just come out. I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. Because I'd always loved Soviet post-war stuff. There just wasn't much around, or there hadn't been at the time. And this was just completely out of the blue. And I was like, this is crazy. So I bought it, I built it. There wasn't much references at the time still. It was still a bit of a secretive tank. But again, that really got me hooked back in. And that was probably my sort of next big phase that I've not really left since then. That really kicked it all off. And I think, again, it was a small scale one, it just happened to be there in the shop. So, yeah, that's probably what then really hooked me on the 72nd scale stuff for good. But actually, just to add as well, I'd built it. And a couple of years later, I think I got internet access around then. References started to appear online, and I realized the kit wasn't so great. It was based off the old DML Dragon kit, which was from the late 80s. I think they just used parade shots and photos, so it wasn't particularly great. But yeah, lots of references were sort of becoming available online. I then thought, right, I'm going to build it again and do it better. So I'd scratch built probably half the hull and a lot of the turret and stuff. And the wheels weren't great. I thought, well, how am I going to do those? And that's what got me into resin casting. So that was my first sort of experience there. So it was a good opportunity for that. And I taught myself very basic resin casting, like 1-part molds, open, no vacuum equipment or anything. It's just simple stuff. But again, that was great. And that was it then. I was completely down that rabbit hole. Soviet armor, 72nd scale, scratch building. Yeah. And I think then, it all took off from that.
Well, how old were you when you did a cutout?
Yeah. I started it when I was 15.
Right.
I think I finished it when I was 16. It was like my final year as a junior member. So that was that one. Sadly, I don't know where that model is. It's such a shame. I've got a photo of it. It's on the cover of an old IPMS magazine in black and white photo. Not very good, quite small. But I've always been a bit sad that disappeared. I'm sure it wouldn't look quite as good to me now. At the time, I felt it was great.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, IPMS Junior Nationals. Wow, that's fantastic. Great. And it's funny you talk about the T-80 and 172nd scale and you bring it back. It was a copy of the Dragon 135th scale.
Yes.
Kit. And I remember when that kit came out. And it was everybody freaked out because it was just this great, supposed to be this great kit, and the tracks didn't even fit. And you couldn't get them underneath the skid plates.
It was too big.
Too big. Yeah. It was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. Even though I was focusing on 72nd scale stuff, I bought that kit. I didn't build it, but around the same time, I bought that one simply because I just loved the Soviet stuff. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm a bit of a secret 35th scale hoarder. I seem to buy them and then just sort of hold them and stroke them. So I keep meaning to build one. I've got one on the go again, and I tinker with them now and again. I think I'll get one done at some point. It's one of those not a New Year's resolution, but every year comes round, and I think I'm going to build one aircraft, one 35th scale arm, something with a figure and some groundwork, and then at the end of each year, it's like Groundhog Day.
It would be a far departure. I'm looking at some of your Instagram photos, and in some of these photos, I feel like you haven't taken your internet security seriously enough, because you've got detail parts on your finger, and there's enough of your fingerprint there that I think somebody could replicate your fingerprint. So
getting my phone and getting my laptop. Never thought
yeah. So these details, it's crazy how small they are, but you must be a very, I guess, dexterous. Is that the right word? You must be somebody that has very, very fine control of your fingers, because these details are just, I joke about the fingerprint, but literally this detail is, a few layers of your fingerprint. It's so small.
Yeah, I actually shock myself sometimes when I see the pictures blown up, because when I'm working on them, I feel like I almost get into them. You know, it's hard to explain. I sort of, you get shrunk down into that sort of space. I know what you mean. I think, you know, obviously eyesight's sort of important, and I had a big birthday last year, and I think my eyes aren't quite what they were. So the Optivize is starting to come out a little bit, which I've never sort of used before. But I think you're right. I think really it's the dexterity potentially, you know, being able to work with the things as well as the eyesight. And I think partly it's because I've talked about the scalpel before, but literally, you know, I've been using a scalpel, and I try and get some modeling in almost every day. Obviously not every day, but, you know, I try and really get something in and keep practicing and always just keep that skill going. I have a few other little things that I do. I try, when I'm working with white plastic, I work on a little piece of black plastic card because it gives that good contrast. So I don't use a cutting mat when I'm doing the really tiny things. Obviously, good light, a lot of patience, and maybe a bit of swearing as well. I think that can help. And I try to keep off the coffee too much. I'm a bit of a coffee fiend, so I try not to have too much of that if I'm doing something really delicate.
Yeah, I mean, really delicate. This little part I'm looking at, I'm not even sure what it is. It was for your Shoka, but I mean, there's got to be 7 or 8 pieces in this little tiny piece. I mean, there'd be a lot more swearing than model building going on if it was my bench.
I'll have to admit, sometimes I'm working on them, and I work on them generally on just a little wooden board, like a kitchen board, and I have a piece of white A4 paper on it, and then I have a little piece of black plastic card in the middle, which I then work on. So I try and keep quite a clean area, because they're so tiny that if you've got a cluttered area, they just disappear. But every now and again, something will happen, like the phone will ring or the door will go, and I'm in the middle of doing something. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna have to leave and come back, and if I just a bit of air can blow them on the floor. So I try and keep like little pots. You know, I can just sort of quickly put them in and keep them safe. But occasionally things do go missing, and you know, I curse. I think once something disappeared into my fingernail. It was so tiny. In the little gap between my I was like, where's it gone? I was like looking for it, like on my desk, and I thought, oh, there it is, and it's like in my finger.
First world problems for a 1/72nd scale armor builder.
I know it is crazy. I do sometimes think, well, you know, I've built this, and then when I put it on the kit and finish it, will I even see it? You know, will anyone see it? But to be honest, you know, I just build it because I like it. You know, I like to do it. It's not, you know, not for anyone else really. It's nice that people, you know, like your stuff. I'm sure we all feel like that. But you know, I just enjoy it. You know, I like the research. I like the challenge. I think I like the idea of trying to make a small scale kit look a little bit bigger in a picture. That's something I've always sort of quite enjoyed trying to do. It's like a little challenge. And of course, with 3D printing, though, that's a bit of a thing that's come out onto me from nowhere, it seems. But you know, I've taught myself some of that as well. But I still like the old way too. So you know, I'm sort of combining them both a little bit at the moment. I think I delved quite deeply into the 3D printing side and design. There's much to just sort of get familiar with it. I think when a new tool comes along, I think it's always a healthy thing to try and get to know it, learn about it, and then you can decide, do I want to stay with that? You know, is it for me? Is it useful? Because really, it's just a tool for modeling. It's a tool to get to a goal. I enjoyed doing it, and it has some of the similarities with you know, manual scratch building, I think, but obviously then some differences. But yeah, that's something I'm quite interested in over the last sort of year or so. I think as well, there's strengths with the different approaches. You know, I think some things I wouldn't even dream to 3D print. I'm just thinking, I'd rather just chop some plastic. You know, I'd rather just sit down. I work on a computer all day. I'm a computer programmer now. So sometimes I don't really want to just sit in front of one again all night. And I just want to chop some plastic and glue it together. So, but it's great for other things, you know, wheels, tracks, anything where you've got these very symmetrical, multiple pieces that would be, you know, a bit of a pain to scratch build. Even if you cast them in the old traditional resin way, like I used to. But yeah, I know some people are a bit against 3D printing, it seems, but to me, it's like, you know, everything's on the table.
Yeah, your 3D printing, your ZSU is the gun bays in that. You have the top.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, those are beautiful. I tell you what, the first time I saw it, to tell you the truth, I thought it was the 1/35 kit. I did, because you opened up the bay and the ammo bays were in there, and it was very, very impressive and very what you are 100% right about 3D printing being a tool. And we've talked about that on the show before, and it's such a great tool. And for the asymmetrical stuff, definitely for stuff like that. You are a computer programmer, so are you using CAD or are you using?
No. So my background was actually in sciences and chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I did a PhD in computational chemistry, and that's how I got into the computing side. So it was in the chemistry department.
Okay.
but it was all computer based, like molecular modeling and drug design and stuff. That's how I sort of gradually moved into computing. So now at the moment, I work in the sort of financial computing. I actually did some defense industry computing like many years back, about 20 so years ago. That was about 24 years ago now. It was when we were getting the Apache helicopter in the UK. So we licensed that here. I was writing some of the maintenance software for them. But in the end, I moved completely into computing, but not CAD. No, I'd never done any. I installed Fusion 360 and it was all new to me, and just watched lots of YouTube videos, just teach myself really. And I actually think doing a lot of manual scratch building, even though there are a lot of differences, of course, I think that mindset helps. And I think even my job as a computer programmer, I treat myself as building things. I build software. I know it's different from modeling, but you construct the bits and they come together and the program builds up. So yeah, it was really just, it seemed to just tick a lot of boxes for me, once I started doing it. I thought it was fantastic. But like I said, funnily enough, I've eased back over the last sort of a couple of months. I've done quite a lot of it, and it's quite intense. It can be quite tiring. You can find that the hours just disappear. You're sort of designing these things, and you just want to get the next bit done. Quite addictive. Gone back to doing some of the more traditional way.
Nice. So, Alex, I want to hit the reverse button in life.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I want to go all the way back to my introduction to you, and I'm going to throw something up on my screen.
AFV modeler. Issue 1. Yes.
Do you remember what you had in it?
A Desert Challenger 1 from Gulf War, Revel 72nd scale.
Spot on. Yeah, that's right.
I'll tell you why I remember that so well. That was my very first magazine article. So
awesome.
I think your first article, when it appears, that's the biggest buzz, I think. I still get a buzz now, but there's an interesting story actually behind that. So what happened was missing links had sort of become a thing in the late 90s. I think it was around 98, 99. Maybe.
That's my next topic. We'll get there.
Oh, is it? I won't go
keep going.
So that was... missing links had come around in the late 90s. And I remember one day I was online just browsing around looking for model stuff. And there wasn't a huge amount that I can remember at the time. There was the modeling news groups, which are very dry text-based sort of things like rec.models.scale. And they were okay. And then I saw this site called Missing Links. I was like, oh, what's this? I sort of went in. There's all these little like discussions going on and a gallery, nice pictures. I was like, wow, this is great. So literally every day, the first thing I did, I woke up, checked Missing Links, and it was just such a fantastic thing. So, you had all these modelers that a lot of them still well known today. Mick Jimenez, Mirko Braile was on there.
Adam Wilder.
Yeah. Exactly. Mike Rinaldi appeared after a bit. They were all there in the early days, and many other names. I don't want to miss one out. It was absolutely fantastic. So I was on there and then got a few of my things in the gallery. And then one day I had an email from someone saying, we started up this new magazine called AFV Modeler. Would you be interested in contributing to it? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. I've never written anything before. I sort of looked at and it's from David Parker, who obviously we know well now. And the address was in Newcastle in the Northeast. Now, I'd literally just moved to the Northeast from the south of the UK from my previous job. I'd literally only been there a few months. I was like, I can't believe it. It's actually near where I work. So in the end, and I joined the local sort of IPMS club. So I joined it, and David Parker was there. So he'd actually approached me completely separately from this. But then within like no time at all, I'd met him in person. Obviously, I got my article in there, and and that was it. I had the bug. I was bitten by the article writing sort of bug. But yeah, I think it was taken with a non-digital camera. It was before they became good digital cameras. It was just an old film thing I had. Not an SLR even. It was just a sort of weird point and shoot one that had a sort of basic macro mode built in. Yeah, good memories.
Nice. Yeah, I got that. I think I was 15. I remember buying it at Columbus IPMS show in Columbus, Ohio, and it hit the newsstand. It was the first of its kind in terms of a magazine like that, and I think really changed the game. And you mentioned Missing Links. That was another site. I was very similar to you. I was, in high school, every day I would check Missing Links, not only for the gallery updates, but the forums as well. Like you said, they were extremely active, almost in a sense of like a Facebook group today, where it was a core group of world-class modelers sharing their work. And Alex, one of the other pieces that really sticks out to me, and it was also published in the gallery section from Euro Militaire from you, is the Panzer IV L70 that you scratched the interior on.
Yes.
That sticks out to me as well as one of my favorites from you.
Yes. Yeah, I still have that. That's right. That was, I took that to the first Euromilitaire that I attended. So I went to Euromilitaire is early 2000s, I think, that one. I mean, that was a big show. That was a fantastic show. Now long defunct, but all the big names were there. You had lots of European guys. A lot from the US came over. I mean, there's one year in particular where Osprey had sort of hosted an area, and they got a lot of their authors from various countries over. It was just such a buzz that time. I mean, the Missing Links seemed to then tie in with Euromilitaire.
Yeah,
you'd go on to Missing Links, and there'd be people all posting their models just before the show, and then after the show there'd be all the talk, and it was such an exciting time. Like you said, it had that social media feel, I think, because it was so dynamic.
Yeah.
It's a bit sad now. It's not what it was, and I think social media like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, they've all piled in and really taken the shine, I think, off it a little bit, the older forums. But in its heyday, it was, like you say, I think it was my homepage as well. I'd open a browser up and it would always just come up first.
Yeah,
it was fantastic.
Incredible place. And it's unfortunate because social media is wonderful, don't get me wrong, but I don't know of a place on Facebook or a group that kind of matches what Network 54 had, and those personalities and the quality of work, just the depth of conversation as well.
Yeah, there was genuine research, that you could find almost on Missing Links. That's how it felt, on the Axis forum.
Oh, yeah.
I visited a lot. There was like very knowledgeable people, and you could go and search and find this stuff. I'd always go and think, well, I'm building this now. I'll go on there and I'll have a little look around. And like I said, nowadays, Facebook's great. Like I said, I mean, you're bombarded with great models and chat, but it seems so transient. Almost, it's so ephemeral,
a little superficial
really
at sometimes.
Yeah, and it's sad. It's maybe I feel a bit old, saying these things, but it does feel a bit like that. And it's got its place. It's fantastic in other ways. It's very easy to post your work there. You just sort of click, done. But I do miss that other side of things, like you said. Yeah.
It's almost like it was focused, like filtered through a funnel, because there were so many fewer people that were participating on Missing Links. The great thing about social media now is it's so collaborative. We get to talk to people like yourselves halfway across the globe, kind of in real time, and really ask questions, So that aspect is really good. But I think you're right. As far as the one thing that we're missing from the heydays of Missing Links is just that sort of core group and the passion of that core group for the details, which was just 100% spectacular.
It was. I just loved seeing new things in the gallery, what new chat was happening. The other problem with Facebook as well for me is that it's almost too easy to set groups and things up. So there's so many modeling groups now.
Yeah.
It's spoiled for choice, and it's almost like diluted down. There's so many to check, and you just couldn't check them all.
Yeah, the forums are great too, because I think you could search them better. As far as the retention of the exchange of ideas and the retention of information,
that's right.
I think it's probably still superior. And then like you said with Facebook, I think I spend time each month, I call it weeding my feed, but you've got to go through there and kind of cull, what's there, or you'll just get completely overwhelmed.
It's too much. It's like spoiled for choice. You can have too much. And I actually moderated one of the groups on Missing Links for a few years. It was a Braille scale one, not surprisingly, the small scale group. And I had to stop after a few years. I was finding I was spending too much time doing it. I had a family, young children at the time. Plus I was starting to go into a lot of shows at the time. I had a spate of a few years where I was off to Torrent in Spain and the US Nationals and Euro here and so on. It's a shame. I think there's a place for those sorts of forums still, but they seem to have suffered. But I do actually have a lot to thank Missing Links for, because it was where Osprey sort of must have noticed my work, and then they approached me to write a few books. So, I have those memories too, of good memories.
I'm excited to see kind of what the next step is. We move from those forums to, Facebook, picture sharing and all the great things, but it'll be awesome to see kind of where Gen 3 takes us. Maybe, maybe we'll see at some point a forum of communication that includes elements of both. But before I mute up here and let these other guys talk, I want to go back. You said Braille scale, and that totally reminded me, but you said you're starting to have to use an Optivisor. I'm thinking you need to start using like an electron microscope, man. That's just, your work is so tiny. That's amazing.
Well, I am actually short-sighted. It's a pain because I wear glasses if I'm driving or watching the television and things. But I have got very good close-up vision. I always have. So I treat it as a bit of a blessing in that
absolutely.
respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny because a friend of mine, quite a few years back, he's a modeler though as well. He said, "Have you ever thought about getting laser eye surgery? So you don't have to wear your glasses and stuff." And I said, "Well, I'd have to look into that. I wonder if it would affect my short." My short vision, it would take the edge off that. He said, "Oh yeah, it wouldn't be quite as good." And I was horrified. I was like, "How could you suggest that?"
Yeah, no, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, hard nope.
Yeah, I was, this is really great bringing about missing links because I'm the same way as you guys were. It was like my first page. And, you'd see every time I'd open it up, I'd look for the new blue highlight where it had been highlighted. Yes. There was a new entry.
The excitement.
The excitement. Something is added to the gallery or something was like, yeah. But I want to go a little bit forward. Your Osprey books, those were at the time and now, don't get me wrong, they are fantastic books. I've got them all. I tell you, the one that really stands out to me is you took the Academy Hemet in your bigger book.
Yes.
The Hemet, which was a dog of a kit at the time. And you turned that thing into a fantastic vehicle. And that's one of my favorite builds of yours. So because of what the kit was, I mean, compared to what we see today with some of the manufacturers that are coming out with 1/72 scale kits or armor kits and stuff like that, those kits back in those days were rough. Yeah. And what you did with that was great. And in the tips and that was actually the first place I ever saw anybody use sheet styrene to put handrails on because they would you slide the sheet styrene in so you get a level, the right length, height all the way across. I didn't know that before. And I actually learned something from you today that when you're cutting white, put a black piece of paper out.
That contrast.
I didn't even think about that. That's great. Yeah, it's great. Could you go into a little bit of your Osprey books, how you got into them?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so like I said, I think it was the early sort of days of missing links, and I was contributing to the gallery quite a bit. And I'd done the AFE modeler article and then started writing for another UK magazine called Military and Scale. Spencer Pollard was the editor of that. Sadly, that went a few years ago as well. I had a message from Osprey, just sort of out of the blue, saying we're bringing out a new softback modeling series. We're trying to gather various modelers, for different sort of periods and interests and so on. And I think a lot of them were people they'd seen on Missing Links. Would you be interested in writing anything? I said, oh, well, sure. And at the time, I was doing a lot of the Axis stuff. And they mentioned maybe the Panzer IV book, set to work on that. Spent about a year on it. It must have gone well enough because they came back and said, would you consider another one? This time Tiger, not surprisingly. So I did that one. And again, I think they must have liked it enough and said, well, how about a masterclass book? And I was like, oh, that's a lot more work. But they said, well, if you get it done within 2 years. So I said, okay, I'll tell my wife that I get paid. So I can essentially get myself some extra modeling time and, get a bit of extra money, from that book. And I sort of started work on that, and that was a real biggie for me. It was hard work. The truck was in that, and at the time it wasn't a great kit. My scratch built, if I remember, the crane on the back and quite a few little bits and bobs. Managed to find some aftermarket wheels to replace the poor kit ones. The grille on the front, I actually just had those custom made by a small photo etch company in the UK. So I had a bunch of those made, and I actually just sold a few to a few other small scale modelers just to sort of recoup the cost, So that was really a chance for me to really pull together all the small scale sort of interests that I had. And it's funny enough, it was around that time that I was able to sort of push again on the sort of Soviet side of things. So again, I'd done a lot of Axis armor. For that book, they wanted a mix of things, which makes sense. They wanted it to appeal to as many different sort of people as they could. So I did some modern, some World War, a bit of everything, wheeled, tracked, that sort of thing, different finishes. They have to whitewash this 3-color this and so on. So I thought, I'll do a T72. So I took the Revel kit. I think that was really the time that I then went down that rabbit hole again and completely stayed down it pretty much ever since. And I still like the Axis stuff. I've got a few things that I sort of started now and again. I've sort of tinkered with. I'll probably get back to it at some point. Yeah, so that was the Osprey story. I think then the series itself, the softback one, they got a good set of books from it. It sort of ran its course. It was a great time. I mean, it was that period from sort of the early 2000s to, I don't know, for about 10 years maybe. And then I continued writing articles for magazines and the occasional, chapter in a book here and there. got a couple of other things on the go at the moment, but probably shouldn't mention them just in case they don't pan out. I have thought occasionally that it might be nice to write another book again. If I'd have to sort of find a publisher or come up with a proposal like I did for Osprey. So even though they approached me, obviously, the process is they say, well, can you put a proposal together, a rough outline of, what the content would be, rough photo sort of count, that sort of thing, just a bit of a general stuff. And then they would take that and just sign off on it if they like to, or tweak it. So that was my dabbling in authoring.
Alex, I think it's interesting. We have this conversation all the time with print media, especially the relevancy in I guess you could say in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And I do still think there's room for it, especially with some of the just techniques and approach and just telling the story with scale modeling. And I'm like definitely. Grant, I have a lot of your books. I have a lot of mag articles. I have the Osprey books. You even did the bigger one I think you just talked about was the one it was like spiral bound almost in the
in the masterclass.
I love that. And I loved it because I could have it at my bench and easily open it, not worry about tearing out the binding or anything. Because
that's a quite novel idea. When they told me that that's how it would be, I was a bit shocked at first. It's like a calendar or something. It's like not a book. But then I saw it and I was like, yeah, that works.
I lean down because I have AFV modeler number 10, and this has your L70 in it. And I've used it so many times that the spine is broken and the pages are falling out. So I appreciate appreciate the spiral bound. I think we've hinted at a little bit your work in 3D. What I love too, to be honest, your work has inspired me to go literally buy the kit so I can use your work in the kit.
Thank you.
And not only the Shilka, but also the work that you did on the Chinese tank as well. And I love your cults page. Maybe talk a little bit about, I guess there's probably a hesitancy with some creators to share their work, but I love that you're doing it. Like maybe talk about where you see your cults page going, what other work people could expect on there.
Funny, like you say, I'd started doing the design for myself. It was just didn't really consider, sharing files at the time. I just wanted to get into it. So I did. People seemed to like what I was doing on Facebook and so on. And people started to ask me, will that be available? The STL file or whatever. I thought, well, actually, maybe I could share some of those. So I thought about it a bit. And I know some people don't like that idea because once the STL is out there, people can just take it. They can use it. They could even print stuff and sell the stuff. I thought, well, I'll put a few small things on there and just see how it goes. So like you said, I've slowly been building it up here and there. Some of the smaller items I've just put up for free because I think people can just have them. It's nice to share, let other people benefit from these little bits and bobs. Some of the bits, a little bit more complex, I put a token fee on, price of a coffee. It's like, you couldn't really complain. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff on cults and people charging quite a lot for certain things. I'm like, I'd want the printed out piece for that price, So I'm just sort of gradually dropping things on as I go along. A few things that are really complex I've not put on, like the Shilka turret interior. I'm thinking about it. And a few things, a couple of them I actually sold. So I've actually sold to Armory, who make the Shilka. I sold the hull interior, the engine insert and the drives compartment. So I'd actually done a master for Armory many years ago. So they're a Ukrainian sort of resin and plastic company. But I'd spoken to the owner on and off over the years a little bit. And many years back, I did a T72 conversion for them, a new turret for the Revel kit. And then he asked me if I'd be interested in building the kit, the new Shilka. I said, of course, definitely. And then when he saw some of the 3D stuff I was doing, he was quite interested. So I spoke to him about it. And I sold the two STLs, or the set of STLs for the driver's compartment and the engine. So they're now resin sets you can buy from Armory, which I quite like the idea that, they make the actual kit as well. So I've also thought about doing that occasionally. Another friend recently approached me and suggested this idea of sort of almost licensing the STLs out again to a company. And what they'd do is then they print it on demand. So they handle the printing so there's another guy who's got a company already, I believe. I've not really had a chance to properly delve into it. But the idea would be then that, obviously you get money from each one and they get a bit of money from each one, but they deal with the physical side. So I quite like that. I've had people asking me if I'd actually sell them the bits myself, I'd print them for them. And I don't think they'll realize that the Sonic Mini that I've got, the build plate's like, tiny. You get a fair number of fails chemicals, especially for more complex things. So, you're not going to get everything off it anyway. And it's messy. It's like being in a chemical lab. I mean, I know you guys who've got printers as well.
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to ask you about. Sorry about that. But
no, sure.
You scale things down so small. And I know a lot of STLs are out there in 1/35th scale. And so it's got to be a little bit of a challenge with things like wall thicknesses and clearances to scale things so small for your work.
Yeah, definitely that. That's something I did find quite early on. So it was quite a steep learning curve. I was trying to print different things out. I started with the default settings, the stowage baskets. I designed some for the Chinese tank that was sort of briefly mentioned earlier, quite fine. And they were coming out all wavy. And I was like, oh man, what's going on here? I mean, the beauty of small scale stuff as an aside is that at least it doesn't take all night to print. So, so I can pop it on an hour later, it's done. So that's good. But I did learn quite early on that messing around with the orientation, the various settings for the times of things, I had to sort of tweak them and almost customize them for certain things. And the tolerances is another thing I found, that if I was trying to make some parts that would join together or fit onto a kit, that was something I learned quite early on. Yes, I had that bit of tolerance to things. And it seems the smaller you get, the more sensitive it is. So it was something that I learned quite quickly the hard way, but often that's the way that it sinks in. A lot of trial and error. So when I did the Shilker interior, for example, because I was fitting that into the kit and it's quite a complex fit, rather than it just being like a little thing you stuck on the top or something, I would design the general shape first without any detail on it and then print it quickly, try it. Oh, not quite right. Tweak it. Try it again, iterative approach, really. So it's the usual thing, isn't it, on social media? People see the best side. They see the end result as if it's just like something I just whizzed up,
Yeah, they think that you can just push the magic red button and just make them one. And that's all that there is to it.
Make a Shilker interior button. Ding. And out it pops.
Yeah, we all wish it worked like that.
Oh, the number of times I have to tell people, I had a lot of messages from people asking, oh, would you be interested in designing me this or printing me that? And I'm like, oh, sorry, it's a lot more time consuming than you probably realize. It's not like a 2D printer, send the document to the printer. There we go. It's not quite there yet, the technology. But like I said as well, I mean, my room's quite small I work in. So I've got the printer set up and it's a really cramped little area, and I've got this tiny little box where I do the washing in and my little mini UV thing. And it's all cramped and it's not an easy thing. It's not a conveyor belt, unfortunately. But no, it's all great stuff. And like you said, it's funny. The other thing I found doing the CAD stuff is, I'm on designing something and it's on the screen and I'm working in millimeters, but you forget sometimes. So I've got this huge piece on the screen that I'm rotating around and I'm like, oh, I had a bit more detail there. I can make that really detailed, forgetting that it's going to be hair width when it prints out.
That's right. So, it's got to fit in your fingerprint for the picture.
Yes, exactly. And it's easy to sort of get drawn in and keep adding these details because you can. And then that's something I've learned. But it's interesting because the Shilker interior, I've got the men kit, 35th scale kit, and I've made a bit of a start on that. And I have an idea maybe of trying to print out some of the interior, scaling it up. So it'd be interesting to see how that works, whether I'd want to add an extra layer of detail in because it is that bit bigger. So I've not really done much with that yet, but that's something that I may.
You'd have to use wiring that's bigger in diameter than human hairs like you're used to.
It's really funny because I'm doing a T72, a trumpeter one right at the moment. I'm having that trouble a little bit. It just seems so big. The turret is huge. And I keep making bits for it thinking, are they too big? But they're not. I'm just, you get into that mindset of years of, like you said, of grab handles being a certain rough size, and then when you scale up and it's like everything's double or whatever, it's a bit of a thing. I mean, I can't even imagine doing a 16 scale kit. Oh.
I was just going to say, we need to send you one of these new 16th scale wonder kits. It'll blow your mind, but you might have to move into a new workshop to work on one of those.
I was going to say it would fill my tiny little sort of room and my desk. It would just be, the whole room would be full of the kit. Yeah, houses aren't very big in the UK. But no, the 16 scale stuff, some of it does look quite interesting. It seems to be a bit of a thing at the moment. I know Dave Parker's a bit big on the 16 scale stuff and has been for quite some time now. He does a lot of great CAD stuff. I was tempted a tiny bit by the Trumpeter T72 they brought out a few years ago, but probably take me forever to build it. That's my fear.
Well, how long did Parker take to do that King Tiger that he did, and
Many
then
years,
and then the Panzer IV? Yeah. They're beautiful. They're beautiful.
Oh, they are. They're crazy. I got to see the Panzer IV at Scale Scotland, the model show late last year. He brought it along there, and it's fantastic just being able to see it. It's the amount of work, and you can tell it was a labor of love. You can always tell when a model's means a lot to the builder. I mean, we've probably all built things that not thought quite enjoyed as much as we thought we would. I certainly have. But sometimes you get a subject or a build, and you just fall in love with it, and it really shows. I think I'll steer clear. I'll try and get a 35th scale kit done and see how long that takes and how I find that. This year will be the year. That's my my plan. And maybe a little aircraft. I've actually bought some 144 scale aircraft kits. Sweet, the Japanese.
Oh yeah, the little guys. Yep.
Yeah, they're really cute. They're really nice.
Yeah, I have a Hurricane. They are super crisp.
Yeah. I almost bought that one. I got the just the other day. One of the Messerschmitt 109s.
Nice.
And I've just ordered the Mustang today, the P51B. I think I used to be good on the aircraft. I've obviously not built them for a long time, but they're really nice, and the panel lines are really
crisp.
fine.
Yeah.
I've seen 72nd scale kits with far worse panel lines. These are so crisp and in scale.
Did you choose 1/144th because you took out a 72nd scale aircraft and put it next to a 72nd scale tank, and you're like, nah, that's too big. Too big. We need what else do we got out there? And then you're like, oh, okay, it's a little smaller. We're good. So with the 1/144th.
It does feel a bit like maybe I look at what's the common scale and think I want to go one down in every genre.
That's awesome.
But no, they are great. I mean, I've got a few of other 144 scale aircraft kits, but I've never really sort of got to build them. But these sweet kits really nice. And I think I might try and build it out of the box. I think that's the other thing. If I try and just go crazy on it, I think I might just look at building one or two of them as a relaxing, weekend build, that sort of thing, just to do something a bit different. And I was talking at the beginning about, I used to build all sorts of things. I mean, basically, I just love models. I just love little tiny versions of things. For whatever reason, I went off down the armor route. But I think it was good. I'm always glad that I did sort of try my hand at different things. I built an AT-AT, I built a space shuttle, I built all sorts, a dinosaur, whatever. And it was quite good, I think. I feel that I did that. I feel like I've not then just gone one route only forever. I built a lot of things. I mean, I built quite a few 48 scale helicopters years back. I think they were monogram ones. Was a Huey Cobra, Apache. I quite liked helicopters for a while. Yeah, I'll try and build at least one of those this year, and maybe do a 35th scale figure. That's the other thing I'd like to do.
Nice. You mentioned quick builds. One of the ones that stuck out to me was the BMD, the 3D printed FC model trim.
Oh, yeah.
It was kind of cool. How did you find the quality of the kit?
It was a bit of a mix. The detail was all there. It was amazing. It was, in fact, it was almost too good. I think it was a victim of its own quality. So some of the very thin parts had broken off, and I was worried that they would maybe more would break off even just during painting and handling.
Just looking at it.
Yeah. Blink. Oh, another bit gone. But it was very nicely done. So I replaced some of the bits with wire. I replaced the damaged mesh on the engine deck with real mesh, which is always going to be better anyway. There were some layer lines in it, I found, which is obviously the scourge of 3D printing. And I was a bit disappointed with some of them because they were very hard to address, because the ones on the outside on the flat hull were easy to sand off, but the insides were just so intricate. So, that wasn't so great. And I think part of the problem was that it was the angle it was printed. It was quite a shallow angle. And again, after doing, this is just me, I'm not an expert, but I think that means they can print them obviously quickly because it's like quite a shallow angle rather than being steep. But I think the angle they set it at just seemed to have just created some terrible layer lines. Overall, though, I thought it was great. And I know some people were a bit put back by it. It's like, this isn't modeling. Well, what does it matter? It's like, what next? You'll buy it all painted, and it's like, well, no, I wanted it because I could paint it and do that and get to that point quickly. That's what I wanted to do. So yeah, it was certainly an interesting experience. I think if they can improve the quality of the print a little bit, maybe next time, it's interesting to see what they can come up with.
Yeah, I think what surprised me with that, and they have another one, is those are direct scans from wrecks on the battlefield. I think that's super cool that they probably LiDAR scan them, or I think the model is available. The model is available online. I think FC is doing it because I have downloaded that model and I kind of want to print it, see how it comes out. So it's really cool.
It is. It's amazing. Yeah, like I said, I saw on the ArtStation site that they had some of those, like you say, destroyed vehicles that they'd like LiDAR or photogrammetry or whatever. And you could they had some stills, but like I said, you could rotate them, and some of them you could download. It's just crazy, isn't it? I could never have believed this 20 years ago.
Right.
You could just go with scan it with lots of single photos or whatever through the software. Bam, you've got this 3D crazy.
And yet somehow they still manage to get the turret shape wrong on Shermans or cast vehicles sometimes. It's really interesting, I think, in that regard, is despite the precision of our tools, there are still some things that are just difficult to capture.
That is true. I mean, it's funny because for a long time, it was always very disappointing, the Soviet and post-war Russian stuff especially, that model manufacturers seemed to think that the turrets were just like upside down frying pans, circle with a gun on it or a dome. But
classic Dragon Imperial series.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. In the end, we found that they're much more complex than that. They've got many compound curves, and there's much more to them. But for many years, they just kept doing it over and over again, and it's crazy. But yeah, it's fantastic what can be done these days. I mean, talking about 3D printing, the other thing I quite like about it is a friend of mine. He often tells me he's not that great at scratch building, and he tried, and it was always a bit frustrating that certain things he felt were out of reach. But then he's picked up the 3D stuff, and he's really good. He's able to just really get stuck into that. So it's almost opened up that world for him, which is something that he just felt he couldn't quite do the old traditional way. So I think it's really democratized a little bit sorts of scratch building and detailing. Like, not completely, because a lot of people couldn't either afford a printer or don't have the inclination for that. But again, it's there now, and it's something I think that is being adopted, more and more. I think the last couple of years, it just seems to be everywhere now. You go on Facebook and there's another 3D printed kit from some tiny manufacturer that's probably some guy in his basement, but they can do that. The machines have come down in price. The technology is much better, as with anything. It reminds me a bit of digital cameras. I remember, again, in the early days of the digital stuff, I couldn't really afford an SLR or an expensive one, with an old film style. And then these little digital cameras came along that were quite incredible, and they just got better and better.
Yeah, even our phones, the stuff that the cameras in those can do. But I also noticed there's a lot of manufacturers, garage industries, I guess you'd call them, that used to be all traditional resin casting, and they've either partially converted or completely converted now to 3D printing instead.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. They've adopted it quite quickly, which makes sense. I mean, I do wonder how many of these places are left that do them the old way. You see so many 3D printed things now. The one word of caution I'd say as well is people jump on them a lot, like, oh great, when's it available, this, like this. And sometimes I've seen these very poor photos of a 3D printed kit, like a small scale one, and I've been like, why is that such a poor photo? And then, someone gets it and said, oh, it's terrible. It's got these layer lines everywhere, like ridges, and it's poorly, it's got artifacts everywhere, and there's a trillion supports all over the details. You'll never get them off. I bought one kit. It was a solid hull, but it was hollow, but sealed. And I wanted to replace the grab handles because a couple was cracked and snapped off. And I drilled into it, and liquid resin started to come out because they hadn't created the drainage hole. Yeah.
They forgot the drain hole. Geez.
Exactly.
Oh, gosh.
And that was before I got into like 3D printing. So it was all at the time I didn't have like a curing station, so I had to buy a little UV torch, little light, and try and just sort of wash it out with a bit of IPA that I then bought. And
oh my gosh, gotta love cancer juice just going everywhere.
I know. I was like, oh, what's this? It's bleeding. And it's funny because people jump at 3D as if like the 3D label means quality, but people still have to be careful, of course. And it also doesn't mean they're accurate. You can get a crisp 3D print that's good, but the kit could just be terrible.
And a lot of them will show you the STL, the digital, the artwork, and that can be great.
Yes.
And then the actual prints are just junk. I just bought a bunch of resin from a company, and the design was great, but the actual prints were just, the parts were unusable.
Exactly. There are so many pitfalls that, I think initially there's a lot of excitement over anything that's 3D, and like I said, these new companies companies seem to be starting left, right, and center. But often they are just like maybe, like I say, the person in the garage or basement, and they might have a mediocre printer and they just want to get going, and good for them. But then it's sort of buyer beware as well. Thankfully, we have word of mouth, and hopefully, in fact, it's funny because I'm missing links. I noticed the other day on the Braille forum, which I do still check now and again. Someone has started a thread about 3D printed kits, about reviews of them, to try and share with the community that, different experiences of different kits and whether they're worth getting, or any issues with them. So I think that's certainly a good idea. But I do remember seeing a lot of excitement over these sort of 3D printed monikers on things, and then when you get them, it's not what you think.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the things as well, and I don't know if you've experienced, Alex, you mentioned drilling in and getting liquid resin. I've actually put together 35th scale tracks, and my fingers have actually felt different. They don't hurt, but there's kind of like this weird feeling. And I do believe sometimes people have to be careful where these kits are not fully cured and they're still, dare I say, unsafe to handle with bare skin. So now when I assemble tracks, I actually wear nitrile gloves, and then I put them in the sunlight or throw them in my curing station after I've assembled them, because there's some flex with those pins.
That's a good point.
It's nice, but man, sometimes I've gotten this weird feeling. And so from now on, when I handle 3D stuff, just getting it from the manufacturer, I usually put on gloves, because it at least for me, I'm very sensitive to that.
That's a very good point, actually. I mean, I hadn't really thought, you're right, that I haven't bought that many 3D printed things. I've done a lot of my own, but like you said, they may not be cured properly. That's another thing. The other thing I find with certain resins as well is they can get very brittle.
Yes.
And if they're over cured, that can sort of cause it. And sometimes they're just intrinsically like that anyway. And I think that's why for me, I'm still keen to, if I was doing a full scratch build, and I actually have got one on the go at the moment, which I'm having to keep a bit quiet, but I would probably do the bulk of it in plastic styrene, like the form, and I would then detail it up potentially with the 3D stuff. So for me, the 3D stuff's more about the little details. I'm not so keen on doing a full kit, either myself or potentially buying them, really. I mean, the other thing I'd found with some 3D kits is they try, and I don't know why, it's like they almost want to make everything one piece.
Right.
Literally, like you have the whole hull, the running gear, everything one piece. But then it's crazy. It's harder to paint. It's harder to clean up, because the supports are just all crazy to try and like print such a complex bit. And I don't know why some of them do that. And I would just break them down to a few smaller parts, maybe, not too many. Sometimes you get the whole just one piece.
Yeah, I ran into that. I bought some kits from China, probably the newer brand that people see, SS Model. It's orange.
Yes,
resin print.
Ones. Yeah,
their stuff looks nice, but I just got their grant, and it suffers from the problem that you just talked about, where some of these larger pieces, depending on the settings and the curing, there's some warpage, and it's difficult to make the larger pieces based on, they're just really thick. It's just really thick 3D printed stuff. And that's, I think a current limitation of some of the work is just it suffers to buckling and bending during the curing process.
That's another point, actually. Yes, that's very true. And I think that's the danger. If you've got just one big complex piece and there's some issue with it, it can be a lot harder to fix. Whereas if it was like multiple pieces and one had an issue, then that's not quite so bad. And that's the other thing I just don't like. Often I will like to maybe do a bit of extra work on a kit, even a good 3D printed one. And if it's all just one piece, you're then messing around with that resin. It's back to, and I suppose it's like the old style resin kits, that's quite bad for your health. But it's why I generally would prefer styrene, injection molded stuff for a full kit. But yeah, I mean, again, the technology is going to just get better and better. They'll probably find better resins, not quite as toxic. And it is a bit like the digital stuff. I just remember when the cameras came out, waiting for a little bit because they just weren't quite there, the first ones. The megapixel value was too small or whatever. And it reached a point, like a sweet spot, where the price and the quality was enough. And I think that's what's happened with the printers recently. Once the 4K and then the 8K ones came out, I think that's what really opened it up for people, which is why I thought the time was then, right for me to get into it. And I didn't want to miss out. It was all over the internet and Facebook, and 3D printed this. Yeah, it's a great technology. It can only get better.
100%. Maybe stepping away from 3D, you mentioned going to Scale Scotland. What other shows do you go to in the UK or on the, in Central Europe? Yeah,
so I mentioned earlier that I've been to Euromilitaire quite a bit in the early sort of 2000s. I've been to the IPMS UK NATS, I think in 2001 or 2000. And I had a spate then of going to shows. Torrent was a Spanish show, quite a big one, that had a bit of a Euromilitaire feel, very, very high quality. And I went to that a few times. I went to the IPMS Nationals in the US. like I said, in 2008. And I think what happened was I had a bit of burnout though. My kids were quite young then, and my poor wife, I was sort of jetting off to all these shows in different places. And I then tried to sort of tone it back down. So really for quite a few years after that, I didn't really attend many shows. One that I attended in the UK was Darlington. There's a Darlington show called Sword and Lance. Lester Plaskett is one of the guys behind that. Been there quite a few times. So that's a great show. It's a regional one, but it's got quite a nice feel to it. It's high quality and so on. Just a one-day thing. Scale Scotland. So again, I went there just before COVID, and then it all got closed down for a few years. But I got to go once, and then I went again last year, which was its first time it sort of been put back on. Really, they're the two shows I've been sort of going to within the UK. Scale Scotland show, it's only about 85 miles from where I live, so no excuse. And the Darlington show's a bit less than that. Having said that, I am thinking I need to get myself out to some of the international shows again. So I'm hoping maybe later this year get into one of the continental European shows, maybe Scale Model Challenge or something like that. So yeah, I need to get my passport renewed.
Yeah, do it. I plan on going to SMC, and I will bring issue number 1 of AFE Modeler. I want you to sign it.
Oh, now I've got to go. No, that's great. I mean, yeah, that is one I've been considering. I've been talking to a few friends who've been, and they're saying you've got to go. I'm terrible. It's it can sometimes be just easy to not go. You know what I mean? It's there's no excuse really, and they're always great shows. Those days at Euro Militaire were just incredible. I mean, the models were amazing, but the people. I mean, you go to the bar in the evening and it's like everywhere you looked is like, oh, I recognize that person, or oh, that's so and so wrote that book, or from Missing Links. And it was just great, good fun chat, meeting friends. So yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, any of you other guys going to SMC or?
I won't be able to make it to. I think TJ, right? JB is going to go as well. I'd like to get over to Telford though. I really, really want to go to Bovington and come over and see Spud and a bunch of the guys over there. So maybe either this year or next year, but not SMC, not yet, but maybe someday.
Yeah. That's a big show, isn't it? It seems to be one of the bigger ones at the moment. So I need to get myself back out on that circuit, I guess.
Yeah, Telford was great this year. Had a chance to meet with Spud and the team. Lester wasn't there, but a lot of other familiar names, Kev Smith and those folks. Pete Usher. It was awesome.
Yeah, I saw some of the pictures actually. Yeah. And, it's a big show.
Yeah. Big show, great time, and it's great. Can't wait for SMC. It'll be awesome.
Right, I really have to get that sorted. Yeah, so many reasons to go now. I think the last time I went to the UK Nats was probably about just over 20 years ago. It's been a long time. And I think what happened is I went there and then I went to Euro Militaire, and I think of the two for me, Euro I preferred. I think I just seemed to enjoy that more. I don't know why. Maybe I think it was, I don't know, maybe it was just the way everything was run or the people. I don't know. But the UK Nationals was great, the IPMS one, but Euro seemed to be the show. It's a shame that it sort of ended. I think it just sort of must have run its course. And it started off as mainly a figure show anyway, and it then just seemed to sort of armor just really sort of came in. But no, I think I'd like to get to Telford again. It's been a long time. I mean, when I used to go to the one when I was a junior member, it was in Stoneleigh, I think. It's somewhere else. But I used to enjoy that, I used to love it when I was younger. So hopefully I'll get to see you there.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask you, Alex. Obviously you're known for your 72nd scale armor, but what about painting figures and maybe doing more with dioramas? What are some areas you're interested in outside of that armor? You mentioned an aircraft maybe, but what other areas are you interested in? Well,
figures are something I've always been interested in. The problem with in small scale is they've often not had the quality there. That you get in the larger scales. And funny enough, talking of 3D printing, I think that's been a bit of a boon to the small scale figure sort of arena. I picked up some Syrian 3D printed tankers for a T-72 I did a while back, and they were incredible. I mean, absolutely fantastic. So I painted up 2 of those and I sort of popped them on the tank. Still a bit of a tank on a plank, I guess. There was no groundwork, but it was nice to do them, and they were great. And I think I've always been a bit wary of figure painting because I just haven't done it very much, you know what I mean? And I was always thinking, well, I don't want to do a figure that just brings down the model.
Yeah.
So when these came out, they were so well done that they almost painted themselves. That's how it felt. You know what I mean? They were a joy to paint. And I think when the detail's there, it really helps you. So I've got some 35th scale figures, some similar ones that I'm thinking of doing for a current project. So I would like to really get into those, but it's going to be a bit of a learning curve, I think, doing 35th scale figures.
And here we go, 1/72. Okay, can I recommend a microscope? You know, I mean, painting faces in 35th scale just scares me to death. Grant does it well, JB does it well, but anyway. Well, one more question, I'm gonna let Grant and JB wrap up. You seem to do, obviously you've talked a lot about your Soviet subjects, but it isn't just Soviet subject. It tends to be fairly esoteric subjects. You did the Chinese, the new Type 15, I think it is.
That's right.
You do kind of unusual. So what's your motivation there? Is it something that you like the shape of the subject, or do you just like to maybe be a little different? What's your motivation there?
Well, like you said, my Axis stuff, so I've always liked, and then I had a big phase of that. The Soviet stuff's been a long-standing interest, and I think being a sort of, I guess, a child of the sort of late Cold War, the secret Soviet super tanks were a thing, and trying to research them and find the information, that was always a big thing. So they are my primary interest, really. But like you said, now and again, something will come along, like a chieftain or something. And I think if there's a nice kit of something that's just really, really nice, that can be enough, So I did a few TACOM chieftains a while back. Did 3 of them, in fact. And like I said, the Chinese,
some leopards, yeah.
And so really, it's sort of like if a kit's nice, and it's just good and it oozes quality. I picked up a Vespid Australian Centurion recently,
nice.
And again, it's just an incredible kit. I mean, it really is beautiful, and I'd seen it online, so I knew it was good. So I ordered that. So I think that's sometimes a pull. If it's just something that's just such good quality, it can pull you in. I mean, sort of partly going back to your previous question about groundwork as well and things, that is something else that I'd like to do. I think the reason I've often not done it is because I've intended to maybe do some groundwork, but I've built the model and then I've seen the next shiny thing, the next, I want to go and build that. And do I build that?
Squirrel.
Exactly, yeah. Do I do that, or do I just put some grass in a bit of mud, for a base? I think the tank's more interesting, but I do like groundwork. I've done it now and again. I've always enjoyed it, so I'm going to try and force myself to do that a little bit more. And I think sometimes that can help drive my sort of subject selection as well. If I could think of a good scene for something or see something, a photo that would then be, would be really interesting to make that, because I like just the whole scene. So I'm trying to look around at the moment for little things like that inspiration. So that's part of the driver as well, I think.
So you got to do the base first.
Yes.
And then the tank, because the tank is the shiny thing. So
that's the shiny thing.
That's right.
If I can get some critical mass done on the base,
right,
just to sort of reach that point.
Yeah.
So either in parallel or just a bit before, then I think you're right. That's could be the clue.
Yeah, grass and mud first, then the tank.
Someone did ask me about the model at the local club years ago. I don't really get there anymore because I used to work near it and I moved. But he asked me why I don't do that. I said, well, I'm more interested in building a tank than building some rocks and grass. Well, no, a bit glib, I guess. But I love these, you see some of these masters of groundwork and they look fantastic, I'll be honest. And I do think, I always mount all my models on a small plain black base if there isn't any groundwork, and I get a properly done little plaque for it. I try and make it present it as a sort of little technical piece. I guess that's how I view it.
Yeah.
So it almost sort of tells its own story within the model. But I do like groundwork when I see it in figures.
Alex, one of the questions I have, super tactical, because I love your style, and specifically around, it's hard to explain, just the feel of the subject. And specifically, I'll use your leopard, the new one. I think it's a 2A6, maybe even a 2A7.
2A7, yeah.
2A7 that you just posted. And what I love about it is the muted finish. And I'd love to understand, I've read a lot of your articles, but it's like you do your NATO tritone, and then on top, are you misting on Humbrol Mat 72 and then coming back and removing it a little bit? How do you get that feel?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because I think especially with small scale stuff, it's easy to make them look quite gaudy and toily. like, and that's always been a bit of a bugbear of mine. I've been trying to make them look in scale, and I know there's a lot of controversy around scale effect and things like that. I think there is something there. I don't necessarily think it's what a lot of people say, and I think just bunging some white in the mix isn't necessarily always the right thing to do. But I do tend to mix my colors very carefully and go on the lighter and sort of less saturated sort of side of things. And part of that then, like you say, is the weathering on top and the shading and so on. So you're right. For that, I would tend to, like I said, exactly that, mist on a very dilute, pale sort of dust mud color. I'd then sort of work it with another clean brush, dipped in some thinner, remove it from the edges, the highlights to restore the original color, get a bit of an effect on the flat panels, maybe mist it on a bit again, do it, repeat the process. It can often look terrible at that point. And the number of times that I've done that and then thought, I've ruined it. That's it. What have I done? But then obviously the later steps bring it back. You're only part of the way through. So it's the old thing of it's going to get worse before it gets better. So then you restore the contrast with pin washes and various other sort of effects. Yeah, that's generally the approach I take. And often when I've done that last misting over and working with a brush, I will sometimes mist again a little bit in certain areas to try and vary the sort of effect, because on the one hand you've got a very soft, the airbrushed sort of approach, and then when you're working it with the brush it gives a slightly harder sort of appearance. I tend to sort of just do that until it feels about right, and it's one of those things, I guess, where I just over time I think you sort of get a bit of a feel. I mean, one thing with articles I always find is that they're very formulaic. Of course, it's like a recipe, this step, that step, that step, and for me I try and always mention that I do revisit things again, that these are the key things I've done, but often I will circle back and repeat something and just tweak it and push it and nudge it. And I think that tends to be the way I work. I used to be very, very formulaic, I guess. That's the scientist in me. I used to be a chemist. So it's like 10% this and that. And I'd be very careful and procedural. But then I started to become a little bit more relaxed and rely on intuition, nudging colors around, adding a bit of a filter. Oh, that's a little bit yellowy. I'll try and bring it back down again. And I think everything can be nudged around and repaired. So, sometimes I'll be a bit disheartened with something and think, no, keep at it, focus on the prize, just keep working on it. So yeah, that's really the way, my sort of philosophy, I guess. I mean, for a long time I was focusing on scratch building and detailing, and I did feel my painting suffered a little bit because I was spending longer and longer on the builds, and the proportion of painting time was then much lower as I went along, and I'd be worried that I'd spend 3 months on some build and then within a matter of days I could just ruin it with a bad finish. So I did then try and start to paint mules. I've got strips of plastic where I test things on it, and just trial and error. Does that answer your question? I'm trying.
No, definitely. It's more than I've gotten out of an article. So I love it. I love the frank discussion, because sometimes you can't, sometimes it's hard to read between the lines, and hearing it from, the man himself actually helps out a lot, understanding the process. And like you said, going back and forth and continually tweaking it all the way to the end.
That's the key, the iterative approach. Definitely. I mean, often people will say to me online, oh, that's really nice. What colors did you use? And once or twice I've told people, and I'm thinking they're going to think I'm crazy or I'm kidding because it'll just look not right. And sometimes I've had to post a picture of the model straight after the initial base colors, just prove it almost, because to me it's a holistic thing. It's not like I paint it this color and this is accurate and then I do this and I do that. It's like I have in mind the end point, and I know that these other steps are going to adjust what I start with. So you've got to work backwards almost, That's something, again, I've probably learned the hard way in some respect. And it's funny, whenever I do a new scheme that I've not done before, like a new camouflage, like the Chinese tank's a good example. I've never done anything in those colors. I always would do a little test panel, and I would work along the panel doing each extra step, if you see what I mean. So I could almost see a sequence of how I did it, almost to remind myself and practice on as well. So yeah, I think it's a much more sort of organic thing, and I think intuition it plays a big part in it now, more for me than it used to. But it does make me laugh when people say, what color? Oh, I like the color. And I'm like, the original color is nothing like what you're seeing.
Man, that's awesome, Alex. That's great insight. That sort of ties into you're doing in 1/72 scale, the digital camo, but some of your pieces, you've got they almost look like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, camouflage. And you can tell looking at it that it's not just something that you haphazardly approach, that there's a very deliberate process of getting to where you need to be.
Yeah, I mean, that Shilka's had 4 colors on it, and 3 of them, I thought they could look, again, quite gaudy. It was like a khaki base, and some of the little patterns were in green, some in black, some in like a sort of grayish sand color, I guess. So I thought a bit carefully. I looked at my set of Tamiya paints and thought, well, what would look right here, based on the fact that I'm going to probably darken it a little bit due to some of the weathering, and this might change it in this wash. So really, it was a case of just really thinking it through a little bit, based on part intuition, part experience, paint mule, that sort of thing. And I think for that one, for the Shilka, I used Deck Tan, which is one of my favorite Tamiya colors. I actually used that for one of the colors, but also mixed it in the others, and then it gave that little bit of commonality. So it drew them a little bit closer together, because I was really concerned with that one that it could end up just looking very, very toy-like, with these multicolored sharp patterns on it. So that was something that I was really careful with. I mean, many years ago, I saw a picture in a magazine. It was actually a military sort of magazine. It wasn't a modeling one, and it had some advert. It was a defense industry thing, and it had someone's hand in the advert, and a military green sort of truck in that shrunk and photoshopped onto the hand. So it was a real one. I remember looking at that thinking, that's incredible. Imagine if you could make a model in your hand like that looked like that. And then I started to look at my models and think, well, why don't mine look like that? And that really set me off on that road of color mixing and muting down, because that's one thing I noticed. I thought, well, it's not that vibrant like my models looked at the time. It had that more sort of muted, toned down, desaturated sort of look. And it's that whole question, I guess, of, you see a real object outside, like a real tank. You've got bright sunlight maybe, and then inside the house you've got a model that's much smaller, in a room, artificial man-made lighting. It's like, it's never going to look the same if you paint it exactly the same color. No. You know what I mean? It's like, if you want to make it look like the real one looks outside, you're going to have to sort of work carefully to achieve that. It's not just simple as, well, paint it the same color, So I guess that's where scale color comes in, and why it has long been a thing, because I think people have realized that, but it's not always been clear how to achieve it, and just putting white in the mix isn't, it's a guide, and it tries to achieve something, but to me, it was never quite enough. So I always try and choose my colors carefully when I'm trying to sort of bring them together.
Well, that's great, Alex. So I'm going to wrap this up with two more questions. So The first one, I do have to counter. I've seen some of your base work, and it's very, very good. You have a T-72 turret that's laying on the ground. It's in, the UK, the Ukrainian book. That the turret and the groundwork are just great. So you can't say you haven't done any groundwork, because you do have some very, very, very good groundwork. So, that's just another example of you're taking a real picture and basically making that picture and making it real. And just a great image. And our last question is a question we always ask people we interview, or most of the time we ask, what is your Magnus Opus build? What is the one build you want to do, or a vehicle that you want to see and any scale you want to see that we don't see any now?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think over the years that probably gets harder and harder. I think if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I'd have a big list. I mean, it's crazy these days, isn't it? But
yes, it is.
Can I say two things almost? And I'm not sure which. So
go ahead. So
potentially something in 16 scale. It would be like a T80 with interior, so a David Parker style, but Soviet thing. That's on the one hand something that I would potentially consider. The other thing is, and it ties again in with my interest in sort of Soviet Cold War stuff. There were some very obscure prototypes from the sort of mid to late 80s, Soviet ones that were very secretive. I mean, literally only over the last sort of 5 to 8 years, maybe, some poor photos have appeared of them. And funnily enough, Trumpeter have actually announced 2 of them in the new catalogue that you guys probably have seen as
I think I actually sent that to you. I was like, so did you see these 2 very...
You sent me some of the small scale ones. Yeah. But they're in 35th scale, though, these 2 in particular that I was interested in. And they're very obscure. I mean, they're just prototypes. I've always dreamt of doing them. And a few times I've almost started a scratch build. And then when I got my 3D printer, I thought maybe that will give me the impetus to do it. But I've never been able to find enough information on them, to do what would be a good job. So that would probably be my other choice. Very niche. Object 477 and Object 490, which most people probably never heard of. But like I said, they're these super secret next generation Soviet things. So if the Cold War had continued, these could have become a thing, you know. And I think they take me back a little bit to that time when I got interested in the Soviet stuff in the 80s, where it was hard to find information on them. You know, I'd go online when I finally got online, and I would be like scouring the internet, you know, searching for glimpses of these things. So I think it takes me back a little bit to that sort of earlier feeling. Yeah, sorry, that's quite a long answer.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, I'm also a kid of the Cold War, and I remember watching the news and looking at images of Afghanistan and seeing the upgraded T-62s with the spatial armor on.
Yeah, the brow armor on.
Yeah, and just going, oh my God, I got to get a picture of that because I want to put it on my old Tamaya T-62A. You know. Yeah. So hey, this, you know, Alex, I really, really appreciate this. I know the guys really appreciate this. Has been a fantastic interview. I had a great time. Oh, you've done we're all happy here. So, you know, I really do thank you for your time and the great information, you know, and I'm sure our listeners are going to be overjoyed. You know, again,
thanks,
I'm just like, not a problem. Again, I just want to say thank you. And it's been a fantastic talk.
Oh, thanks, guys. I mean, it's been superb. Like I said, I was looking forward to it, and it's been even better than I thought. Like you said at the start, I didn't think I'd be able to talk so much. I'm quite quiet normally, but once you get me talking about something I like,
you know, I think that's kind of the trick is we talk to people that have all different personalities, but what everybody seems to share is this passion and this love for this hobby. It's a great hobby. We obviously are passionate about it, but Alex, I'm going to echo what Grant said. It's been an honor. Your work has been so inspirational over the years, from the days clear back, missing links to nowadays, the Shilka, the Leopard 2 that you just did, you know, the Type 15. I mean, I just go on and on, but it's been an honor. Thank you so much for coming with us and sharing some insight and some, you know, some of your own techniques and things that you do in your hobby.
Well, thanks again, guys. Like I said, I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed it. Don't have a club near me, so it's great to talk to people when I can about my passion and, you know, something we all love. And like I said, it's a great hobby. I think it is. It really is.
Awesome. Yeah, Alex, this was a pleasure. Finally, nice catching up with you.
Yes. It's great to meet all of you guys, actually. I mean, I've listened to your podcasts, and I've known, you know, a few of your online presences for a while. It's always great to talk to people in person. Thanks again.
Oh, anytime, Alex, you want to talk, we're just, you know, message away. So just feel free to talk.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, listeners, I think we can all agree that was a really interesting interview. Alex Clark is a man of many talents, especially in Braille scale, small scale, divine scale. It was really interesting talking to him. You know, for me, Alex's work brings back memories of, honestly, high school, you know, noting some of the builds that he had in the interview that, you know, just stick with you. And I think Alex is a great example of a modeler that sticks with you. Some of his subjects are really iconic and, quite frankly, timeless. And he is an artist of many talents and can make small scale look big. Some of his work being displayed on the internet, you know, whether it's a 1/144 scale aircraft noted that looks honestly like a 48 scale plane, or a 72nd scale tank that could literally drive off the battlefield in Ukraine, and his interpretations of photographs into scale. Just overall, really, really accomplished and talented modeler, and super grateful that he took the time to speak with us. You know, what wasn't included is the, you know, prolonged conversation after the recording ended to bond more over the love of scale modeling. So bottom line, thank you so much, Alex, for stopping by the Triple P, and we look forward to talking to you again. Now, going into our next segment, we're just going to talk a little bit about Commiesfest. You know, it happened this past weekend. I think I'm still recovering. I was tired. It was a lot. It wasn't from drinking, but from talking and, you know, having all of our friends here in Denver, with exception to Jensen and Doug, unfortunately, but it was still a great time. And that's, you know, Ian iBones Models is here to kind of talk through his journey and his time at Commiesfest. But for listeners, I'll just tee it up. You know, the show is held on March 25th over at the Wings Over the Rockies Exploration of Flight here in Centennial, Colorado. Really nice, open, beautiful facility. We stopped by the Plastic Pod posse to help them out Friday to set up. And it was the crew of us, I think almost a dozen showed up on Friday to help set up, which was what they needed. And it was quick. We made it fast. And then we went over to my place for Mark Bradley and Jamie Bradley's lovely barbecue. But maybe I'll just tee up the conversation with Mr. Ian Eyebones Models himself and talk about the journey to Denver. And dare I say, what happened before you even left the ground in Indianapolis?
Well, starting off with the trials and tribulations that was the grand journey to Denver. So woke up nice and early, about 4:30 in the morning to make a 8 o'clock flight. I should have known. It's kind of set the tone for the whole trip. And we had a nice rainstorm come through, so I was driving in the rain on the freeway at about 6:30 in the morning. And a guy on a motorcycle in the pouring rain drove past me and going probably 80 miles an hour on the freeway in the rain. So I said, that's interesting. So I get parked. I used to transport my models. I was bringing the 135th T-28. For those uninitiated, that's the giant 4-tracked tank destroyer that they made 2 of, the U.S. did. And one of them used to guard the Armor Museum in Fort Knox, Kentucky. Now it resides in Fort Benning, but it's a giant mammoth of a vehicle. So had that model, and then I had the Hobby Boss 135th T-37A, the world's first amphibious tank, a little Soviet thing. I had the FCM-36, which is that funky French tank that looks like a duck. And I had the Sherman with the AMX-10 or AMX-15, 13 something turret, the long barreled 75 with the autoloader in it. So I took those, flying. I'm not going to take a ton of stuff. So I used the 2-tiered Sterilite little storage boxes you get from Target. John, I think you were actually the guy that turned me on to those. But use that, fill it full of crinkle paper bedding for like small animals and stuff. Works great. I flew out to Vegas with it. I've gone elsewhere with it. Never a problem. Lock up on the lid's good, everything. Well, listeners, you probably know where this is kind of heading because you get to TSA and I have my backpack with my carry-on, and then my personal item is my model. And so I set one of them in the bin, and I set the other in the bin. So my backpack's in one bin, my model's in the other. And it goes through, and I'm just giddy. I'm excited. I'm going to Denver. I'm hanging out with the boys. And I get through metal detector, no problem. You don't have to take your shoes or belt off anymore. Get to the end, and the stuff's not coming out of the machine very quick. I wonder what's going on. And then when it kind of gets through those flappy burlap things at the end, I can see that somehow within the bowels of the machine, the top layer of my box was torn from the bottom, and the bottom is tilted over with a model stuck in the bedding. I think it was the T-28. And as it comes through the flaps, I hear that distinctive sound that all modelers dread, is the sound of plastic clacking on metal onto the floor. And then I said, I see this happening, and I'm at the end, and there's nothing you can do. I mean, you can flip out, you can start yelling at TSA, and you aren't getting on the plane if you do that. So kind of sat there saying to myself, this isn't good. And then I said, I wonder where the second half is. Well, the second half, which was the top and had most of the models in it, was in the person behind me's stuff, open, all the models and all the stuffing all over their backpack in various things. And, I kind of realized at that moment, you guys at the posse have always talked about it's the modeling and the shows are kind of tertiary to the friendships and the connections you make here. And not to sound cliche, but boy, howdy, did I realize that wasn't something we just say. That was legit. Because I'm watching these models that, I have a combined total, probably a month's worth of time in all of them, destroyed by an X-ray machine. So, it comes out, they actually had to shut the machine down to fish the FCM-36 out of the bowels of the machine with a broom. I had every TSA agent practically trying to get this thing out. The supervisor guy comes over, and I'm just kind of sitting here with a blank stare looking at this stuff, and he goes, whose stuff is this? And I just calmly raise my hand, and he goes, those are Warhammer's things, aren't they? And I was like, immediately thought, okay, this guy at least has a frame of reference. I said, let's go with that. Sure. Yep, they're Warhammer stuff. And he says, Well, our machine kind of ate it. And I said, I see that, and he asked, this is clearly our fault. Or he says, rather, not asked, but he says, this is clearly our fault. So we're going to do an incident report. And we're going to try to get this one out of the machine. And there's like 3 dudes with a broom trying to get it out. And, the person behind me's got their stuff out and they're handing me stuff and handing me bedding and, pieces of my models. And, they lay it all out kind of like, you see those evidence busts on the news where the cops have everything. Well, they lay it all out. It must be a government thing where they just laid it all out, taking pictures of it. And T-28 had some boxes popped off. All 3 antenna masts busted off. The 50 cal that was in a pencil mount, I think, is still in the machine at the airport because I never found that. Some of the 3D printed tracks were busted. I don't know if I mentioned that. The FCM 36 had an idler wheel that I thought initially was stuck in the machine still. Master Club tracks were sheared off in one spot. T-37 had a bogey pop off just from a weak glue contact, so that wasn't terrible. And I lost like a grab handle on the other one. But the supervisor comes over, she's filling out the incident report, gets my info. She says, what monetary value do you think these are? I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know. I mean, the kits aren't super expensive, and I said, $100. And she looks at me and kind of gives me that disapproving look and says, come on, buddy, like with your time and everything, we can pump that up. And I'm sitting here as a scale modeler looking at this saying, I mean, I could fix that. It's just a 3D print job away from being fixed. So I said, how about $500? She said, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. And just with the way they took it, and she said that somebody was going to be calling me, which that reminds me, it's now a week after and I still have not gotten called yet. So this is going to be a long process. Needless to say, we filled out the incident report. I got pictures taken, $500 valuation. When I got to actually see the box and what happened, they're X-ray machines. They have radiation, for all intents and purposes, flying through those machines. There are lead curtains on the interior that ordinarily with a backpack or anything in a bin, that's no problem. It'll just go through those, no problem. But the big heavy lead curtain literally sheared the lip that the clips grab onto. Like the box was done. I could not relatch the thing. I said to the supervisor guy, I said, do you have any duct tape to like close this up? And he goes, yeah, we got duct tape, no problem. So I had TSA inspected tape with their seal on it. And I just cocooned this thing in the tape. It wasn't really that weird of a look that you get normally with that kind of stuff. People asking what it is, they see the tape, they don't even wonder. So that was getting through security. The rest of the journey there was just fine, but that was fun. That set the tone for everything.
Nice. Well, when you showed up, I was like, oh, Jesus, what happened? Like, you're like, oh, the idler wheel is somewhere in Indianapolis. I'm like, someone we know has experience with that.
I had Major Jensen vibes when I was doing this the entire time. I was just thinking of that meme where the 2 guys hugging and it just says, I know that feel, bro. And that's exactly what we had. We bonded and destroyed models.
It's weird to say because it's exactly like you said. It's, models destroyed, but like you said, it's just models. You actually don't really care that much in the grand scheme of things with like the weekend coming up. And it was the same with Nats. I knew everything that was going to be happening, hanging out with everyone, having a fun time. So I was just like, you know what? Don't care. I just want to get there and have fun. Yeah, it's annoying, but it is what it is.
I even think it's still got a third.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's poetic that both Jensen and Ian experienced the same, not only at TSA, but at the contest portion as well. So
yep. 3rd place, baby.
But no, so yeah, you get to Denver, and then I grab you at the airport with Josh Buck, and we head on over to Aberdeen Books. So as an outsider, we talk about Aberdeen. What were your thoughts of that environment there?
So, you have a preconceived notion where I remember last time that everybody went out there, I didn't get to join, but, hearing everybody talk about Aberdeen Books where everybody gives you the look when you mention Aberdeen, you get the look and they're like, Aberdeen, right, bro? And I said, yeah, this will be cool. I'm excited to see it. So we pull up and it's like this nondescript building and it looks almost like an apartment building with like a balcony up top. I'm sitting here thinking, what are these boys getting me into? You walk in and there's boxes of books, and then it really clicks because there's shelving units and if you've been to, half price books is kind of what I was anticipating going in there. But it was, for what we do, it was so much better. There was just all sorts of books everywhere. And the temperature was pretty cold because, I was told, do not touch the thermostat. And that wasn't a lie. There was signs on there that said, don't touch the thermostat. But, ambient temperature outside was probably in the 40s or 50s. But you go inside and you may as well not even be inside. You start feeling it in your fingertips, your nose, and your toes, and everything else. But it was amazing. I had mentioned, previously, and those that kind of follow me online know I love Soviet armor and stuff. And, seeing T-34 Storm right off the rip, and they have 5 copies of it. And I was like, well, here we go. That's the first thing I'm buying. And it's like, it's like being at the vendor hall in a model show. You end up with an armful of books. It's an amazing store, an absolutely amazing shop.
Yeah, 100%. I think the person who broke the bank, though, was Josh Buck. He walked out with literally half the bookstore in his arms. And Scott, I think, lost about 5 miles per gallon on his Mazda because of it. But yeah, it's quite a place of lure, and definitely don't touch the thermostat. Going on, so after Aberdeen, we went over, had some Korean food next to Kolpar. You experienced Kolpar for the first time. Thoughts on that as well?
Okay, so I've got I basically, for all intents and purposes, my formative years were growing up in Columbus, Ohio. And John, you've been to Columbus, being a Pittsburgh guy. We were fortunate enough to have Hobbyland as a fantastic little shop. In fact, if you're ever in Columbus on North High Street in Clintonville, check them out. They're a fantastic little shop. So I'm used to seeing what a good hobby shop looks like. But fortunately, like everything else, the internet's kind of putting those, the way of the dodo, just because, we have this hobby shop. Granted, it's not physical, on the internet, but it's always nice to walk into an actual hobby store. So I've heard rumors and and hushed tones about how awesome Kolpar is, and walked in, and of course there was a mother goose laying there honking at us, covering her eggs, which always, being a Midwest guy, that was, made me feel right at home. So we walk in there, and it is exactly what a hobby store should be. It had ample consumables. It had train stuff. It had, those wooden models that, for kids to make. It's got airliners in boxes. It's got RC stuff. But in the back right corner is like model mecca, where you walk back in there and there is a ton of aircraft and armor and soft skin vehicles and everything. I love trumpeter models. Some people are cringing, some people are nodding their head in agreement, I'm sure, but they had the big, I think, was that the North Korean 135th scale ICBM launcher that they had? I've never seen that kit in person, and they had it there. If I had room for it in my carry-on or my checked bag, I would have probably pulled the trigger on that, but for a later date. But yeah, Kolpar, you are beyond lucky, those of you that live in Denver, to have access to that, because I would kill for something like that here.
Yeah, it's certainly an awesome shop. And I think everybody on the line has visited Kolpar, and they probably can attest to it. That's where we picked up Grant for the day. So we met Grant at Kolpar, and we transitioned over and helped the team set up, as I mentioned, the venue, which was a really nice bright hangar. They'd moved the aircraft outside, and then we went back to my place, and that's where Mark Bradley enters the picture. And him and his wife, Jamie, were so kind enough to bring a veritable meat truck to the event, which was, I think, several racks of ribs, pulled pork, and then a absolutely fantastic brisket. Grant, I don't know what you want to say. What was your favorite cut?
All of it. Everything was fantastic. I mean, the ribs were fall off the bone. The brisket was amazing. Everything was so good. I forgot about the macaroni and cheese that you made. I mean, I just went right by it, and just, we were trying to figure out halfway through the meals, like, we got TJ's on his way, and we're trying to go back in there and put some food on the plate before everybody would take the rest of it off of it, and it was all gone. So, but it was all great. It was so good, and everybody had a great time. We all sat around your dining room table and, had a great time and joked and laughed, and it was a great time.
Yeah. And we got to give a shout out to Blaine. So Blaine he's from Phoenix, but moonlights in Denver. His son lives here. I think he gets all-star award for the weekend. He was super great, grabbing either paper plates, ice, but I think most importantly, the biggest favor he did us was going to pick up TJ from the airport. And so super big shout out to Blaine, constant MVP. And when TJ showed up, Ian grabbed a plate of 7 pounds of meat and shoved it in his face.
And a Miller Lite.
And a Miller Lite.
You can't miss the important part. Yep. The quickest way to, not to mention too, is the colossal bear hug that, TJ basically deadlifted all 250 pounds of me off the ground. That's a very important tradition that has happened since Vegas. He's always that guy able to deadlift me. It's amazing.
Yeah, the first of many Miller Lights that night. I think I drank a little too much, to be honest with you.
That was some quick Miller Lights too. That was.
I was.
We were pounding them.
Pounding them down. I think we killed that case of them. I think was it a 12-pack.
Yeah, 12er, man. We killed it.
Yeah.
Well, half of one went on your model. So for our listeners,
oh boy.
After
that was a Coors. That was a Coors.
Oh, that's
that was
right.
After the Miller was gone, we started drinking the Coors.
After Miller was gone, so we're discussing at the dinner table all the different builds and looking over the latest kits we bought. And the night's winding down. It's like, okay, well, we have 2 more things to do. We have to bake funfetti cupcakes, which we baked 2 boxes worth, and it was
at 11:30
at 11:30 at night. And then the next action was for Ian to fix his models. So he sits down at the kitchen table, has super glue, all the things needed, tweezers. And I don't know what I'm doing. I think I'm putting something away in a cupboard. And I just turn around and I see Ian's model doused in Coors Light. His what was it? T26 was a little guy.
It was a T37.
T37. And he's trying to attach a fender, but decides to dump a whole can of beer on it.
Well, to be fair,
walk us through this scenario. I'd love to hear how it happened.
Well, to be fair, as TJ alluded to, we had had some of that modeling fluid, by the bushel. So I was, I talk with my hands, I'm gesturing, and I had a Coors Banquet beer, which was fitting, being that we were in Colorado after all. But, I end up gesturing, and it happened the way the can fell. There's maybe a half an inch of space between the model and the can. And when I did it, I looked down, and, when you pour out something fizzy and you get, just the fizz going there, it was T37 shaped, but it was just entirely coated in beer. So, everybody immediately is full panic mode. So I'm like, so I stand up and I grab a paper towel and I start dabbing it off. And JV's like, don't do that. The alcohol's going to mess up the paint. So I was like, okay, yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. So he flicks on his kitchen sink going, so, it's like we've all been there where you go to drop a X-Acto blade and you instinctively go to catch it, or you spill paint, or you knock over a bottle of Tamiya extra thin and you're just in panic mode, like doing the first thing comes to mind. For me, that happened to be grabbing the model and completely putting it under the stream of water, full blast, and washing all the beer off. And then, of course, everybody goes, what are you doing? Don't do that. And JB says that, just put it down on these paper towels. Do not touch it. Okay. So we do that. And thank God for clear coats, because other than some minor sheen issues, and not any worse for the wear, all the pigments stayed. I don't know how it happened. So good on you, AK and MIG pigment fixers. I use both of them, and it works.
And I think at that rate, we called it a night. And, the next day was at the show, and I'd just go around and ask for everybody's impression of the show. I thought it was really good. Enjoyed, we had a table there right at the front. The Commiesfest crew, Brad, Vern, Sue-Ann, Dan, the whole team, they did a really big bang up job, from organization to execution. Really great work. They took a step up this year and tried to integrate some seminars into it. So some of us participated in that, and just one of the best food trucks I've ever had at a show as well. I thought it was fantastic. So overall, high marks. And then the work on the table obviously was incredible. And we've mentioned Kreiner's natural metal, Jeremy Moore's, not only his armor, but his aircraft as well. A bunch of other friends there, John Everett's Dinosaurs, Cameron Corliss was there. And it was just a really great time. And high marks to them. And I think, a piece that stuck out to me, actually my favorite piece of the show, which won People's Choice, was the USS Texas. He goes by Boring AF on Instagram. He's a traditional sci-fi guy. And TJ got a chance to talk to him. And I was just curious, like, how do you go from Maschinen Krieger and Gundams to a friggin' phenomenal USS Texas? And his answer was, TJ,
it was on sale at the hobby shop. And he's from Texas originally, even though he is now a Colorado local. His name is Clayton. Yeah, super nice guy. We didn't get it. He was at the ODO and I saw him and I was like, oh, I need to go. I was like, I know that guy. I need to go talk to him. And I didn't get a chance. And then we talked afterwards on Instagram, and I was like, "Hey man, I'm going to be there at Commiesfest. I know that's your like local show." And he's like, "Okay, we'll meet up." So as soon as I saw him, I ran over to him and started talking to him. But yeah, he built that because it was on sale at the hobby shop and it had everything in it. It was the full, I think it's a trumpeter kit, if I'm not mistaken, and it had the photo etch and everything. Then I think he replaced some stuff with some 3D printed parts and so on and so forth. And yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, that the show's great. That's my second year going. It's going to be in the rotation from here on out because it's so much fun. And it's cool that they do a People's Choice Award and a Judge's Best, and not a lot of shows do that. So it was cool to see at least it won the People's Choice Award, which to me, it's they have two best of shows. That's the way I look at it, because you're not going to be the People's Choice if it's not amazing. And it was totally awesome. And for any listeners, if you follow him on Instagram, he finally posted the final photos of it. It's not been done for very long. I think it's the first show it went to, and he hadn't even taken like the final presentation photos of it yet. So yeah, he's got a bunch of sweet pictures of it. And yeah, it was awesome to see it out on the table. It was great.
Yeah. In addition to the best of show and popular choice, they also give away the Beeswell Award, which is the best example of something we liked. And it's essentially the crew at Commiesfest that awards a model on the table of any subject, any genre, any type of modeler, just something they liked and appreciated it. And, very fortunate that Steve Baker's daughter won it this year. I think, she was glowing. Steve was very happy, and it was a good family event for them. So major kudos to Commiesfest for doing something like that. And, I think it made a lifelong modeler there. Something she was super proud of. She brought a pink suit. And I apologize, I don't know the genre of modeling of it, but it's of, very similar to Gundam in that way. But it was really cool. Very, very happy for her and Steve. And, his wife was there with the other two boys, and just an overall good thing for them. And that, I think, is one of the most important things to take away from the show, is moments like that. Having a show that sometimes just doesn't take things too seriously, and make sure that, a lot of people get recognized, and the folks at Commiesfest certainly do that with high marks. So overall, awesome show. Grant, I assume you'd say the same thing.
Oh, definitely. I had a great time. Everybody was fun. The vendors were, again, fantastic. I got some great Star Wars Bandai kits. And Doug, just turn off your headset because you're going to hate the prices we got them at.
Todd already told me, man. I'm
and
about that.
Yeah. So, we got some stuff that, I got a 172nd TIE Fighter from Bandai for $20. Stuff that's, unbelievable kits. The people were great. There was a guy there showing off a personal collection he had done, all made himself. That was over, I can't remember the number of models it was. It was a lot. But, and the group there at Commiefest, definitely congratulations. It was a great show. Had a great time. Really good milkshakes at the military. At the food trucks. It was a great time.
So listeners, one thing before we end the segment about Commiesfest, Ian, our special guest, had a great idea, and I believe it was at the show, and it's going to be a future group build. We love group builds here, but this one is super casual. And Ian, tell us a little bit about your idea and what we did at the show.
So a good buddy of mine, Aaron Cook of AK Armor, and I were at BlizzCon in Columbus here this last February. And we kind of realized, standing around the vendors hall, that, you see a lot of older kits that are very clearly, were in somebody's collection, and now they're being sold to the general public. And typically you can get these older kits for, a song. You practically, to quote, ZJB, practically free. They $3, $5, 10 sometimes. It's truly amazing how many cheap kits you see. Now, granted, they are dated, and you're going to have a fun time putting them together. But seeing that, we kind of determined wouldn't it be cool to buy one of these five, like go in with a budget of like $5 or something like that. Buy what you can buy, full kit wise, and slap it together with your friends. So that's kind of where we went with it. We said let's do a $5 group build, and
Yeah. So listeners, if you want to participate, it's very simple. Grab a $5 kit. It's the honor system. We're not going to check receipts here, even though we have all our internet receipts. But in all seriousness, if you want to join in, $5 kit, we're going to start on May the 5th, and it's going to go till the end of the year. There's no timeline. We're going to keep it super casual. I'm going to try to finish it before Nats. But yeah, simple. $5 for the English folks. What's that, Jensen? Like 1 pound, 2 pounds? You're muted. That's embarrassing.
Sorry, I've been sat here listening for so long, I forgot. $5, I don't know, about like £7, or the other way around, I don't know, like £3, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's
basically in this cost of living, you're not getting a model kit for £5.
So yeah, listeners, if you want to join in, $5, we'll keep it fun, we'll keep it simple, and it'll start on May the 5th, and it'll go towards whenever. But it's just a unique challenge among friends. I think all of us there, Jeremy Moore joined in, and a few others, where it's $5, put it on the table. You can buy it at a show, you can order it off eBay, honor system, or if you grab something from your stash that was around $5, that's close enough. TJ bought 2 there. Unfortunately, he's down to 1. The other one went into the ether somewhere. Was it a Newport? Somebody jacked your Newport?
Yeah, it was. I was lucky enough from the vendor that was right across from where our table was that had all the kits. I found from Edward, I found 148 scale Newport biplane in Russian service, which had awesome decals in it. That's what I was most excited about because I saw those decals. I'm like, these are sweet. These would look right at home on a Mac kit because that's where most of the decals from the kits are all from World War II graphics, like on airplanes. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And that sort of thing was starting in World War I as well, with guys that would paint stuff on their airplanes. And this one has some really cool things. It was like a devil riding a cow or something like that. It was like ridiculous. It was awesome. I was like, that would look so cool. And for $5 for essentially decals that looked to be in great condition, I was like, it's sold. And then I bought I can't remember, it's a monoplane from World War I too, a Fokker EV, I think is what it is, or E5. I think it's actually, the V is supposed to be a 5. But yeah, that one I still have. So that's going to be my $5 bill because it has no rigging, which will make it easy. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. It was a great idea. I mean, did you talk about when we're starting at the day that it technically goes live?
May the 5th, Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
Cinco de Mayo. Get your
5-5. Drinking margs, working on your $5 kit.
Slinging jalapeno margaritas and tomato extra.
I got lucky and got a ICM 1/172nd scale I-16. I mean, the fuselage is as long as my pinky. Like, it's such a tiny little airplane, so I'm channeling my inner Luftraum, see if I can't do that up and make it look good. But yeah, kind of going off of what TJ was saying about the decals, frequently asked questions we've been getting the most of. You open one of these $5 kits, your decals might be roached out. Like I said, you buy the kit for $5. If you buy new mats, buy new decals, roll with it. Like JB said, honor system.
Yeah, for sure. And I picked up an old Otaka or Aoshi, old P40. It's riveted, recessed panel lines. It's a rugged model as well. When I walked outside into the 40-mile-an-hour wind, it got whipped off my stack and blew across the parking lot. I heard the canopy tinging its way. And then I've never seen Ian move that fast in my entire life. Ian pulled his best Usain Bolt interpretation and chased down a part of my model. But no, it's fun. So May the 5th, $5 kit, join in, have some fun, keep it light, keep it fun. And you're welcome to replace the decals with masks, or essentially it's basic kit build rules or standard out of the box rules for IPMS where you can, replace those decals. But anyway, that's going to wrap up the Commiesfest day. Sunday, we checked out the World War II Museum down south and then had Korean barbecue, which was, I think, the pinnacle of the weekend to close it out. And, we did our Ocean's 11 at the fountain. Everybody faded away with that soft music on, but it was a great time, a lot of fun. Not going to dwell on it anymore because it'll make us sad that it was gone. But what's your saying, Jensen? It's not sad that it's over, but
be happy that it happened.
Yeah. Exactly. But that's it. That'll wrap out our Commiesfest show recap. Thanks all for listening to that. We hope you can join us next year in Colorado. It is typically one of the last weekends in March. And I'm going to turn it over to Doug to talk about where you can find some Plastic Posse merch.
If you want it, if you want to rip the posse, you can check out our merch page. Many of you have already ordered Triple P coffee mugs, t-shirts, jumpers, or even some of our official Triple P Lounge trousers. You can order all of your stylish Plastic Posse merch on the web at, well, it's Teespring. It's now spring.com. It's https://plastic-posse-podcast.creator-spring.com/.
Well, thanks so much, Doug. And, we just want to take a moment to thank all of you for joining us for this episode 67. Your support, along with our great sponsors, the Posse Outriders, help bring the Triple P to you every 2 weeks. Remember to send feedback on this episode or any others to plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com or through your favorite social media page. And if you haven't joined our Plastic Posse group page on Facebook, please head on over there and join the group. We have almost 4,000 members. I think we crested that and continue to grow. And there's a lot of talented people there that love to share their work. So in closing, thanks for coming along on this ride. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And you know what we like to say, yeehaw!
If you would like to support the Triple P and become a Plastic Posse Outrider, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Plastic Posse Podcast and set up a recurring donation there. This helps us offset the cost of bringing you the Triple P. There are 3 different tiers of support, starting at just $1 a month. If you would like early access to the Posse episodes, the ability to message us directly, and special content like JB's complete build of the new Tamiya Jagdpanzer 4L70A, give it a try. Let's recognize our amazing deputy marshals. Frank Perone, Dennis Tannett, the voice of Bob, Jeremy Diamond, Ryan Smith, Terry Wilkinson, Chris Lovewell, Andrew Callis, Ethan Idemill, Bruce the Model Noob, Steve Baker, Eric Dalglish, Joe Porche, Grant Pearson, Patrick Brown, Steve Schaefer, Jay Kidd, Paul Burdett, Brandon Gentry, Robert Klein, Mark Ewing, Ted Kawahara, Josh Orr, John Bryan, Scale Model Hanger, Toadman, Model Doc, Doug Reed, Greg James, Les Ricala, B Cult 1911, John Everett, Josh Buck, Hack Rifle Model Works, Thomas Baniak, Mark Bradley, Zach Pias, Joel Munson, Eric Brubaker, Jeremy Moore, DB Scale Model Studio, Matt Johnson, Jeremy Elliott, Mike Talley, Previous Seat, Mediocre Middle-Aged Modeler, Dan Offel, and JC Osborne.
And a shout out to our excellent posse foreman, George, G. Baker, Warhoff Models, Drew, Ross, Eric, Len, John, Cliff, Rick, Eric, Mike, Alex, Benjamin, Craig, Papa Steve, Logan, Red Beach One Studios, MD Models, JV, Toby, Matters of Scale, Damien, Kieran, Cody, Papa Mike Charlie, Tim, Nukeman Mike, Greg, Jack, JAK, Ash, Irish Pat, Paul, What's the Deal with iBones Models, Mr. Grizz, Jackson, Chris, Lee, Jamie, and Steve. Thank you, guys.
And of course, our Posse Outriders, including Pete, Logan, and Tom Stuff. Also, we are asking all of you for a favor. Please consider posting a review of the Triple P on your podcast platform you are listening to or on Facebook. Each 5-star review helps others modelers find the Plastic Posse. Also, if you haven't already, please join the Plastic Posse group on Facebook. It is a great place for the community to interact, post build pics, and ask questions, or just hang out.
Thanks, Grant. That'll wrap this episode. But before we leave you, we just had someone sign into the Zoom. Who just showed up? I believe.
Who's here?
Oh man, is that who I think it is?
Is that Jeff Spinelli? The Jeff Spinelli and Johnson Taylor and TJ Hammer and Grunt Mayberry, and is that Dog Smith?
I think we got Jethro in the chat now.
I talked to Santiago Gentry the other day, and I wanted to hop in here and really tell you guys I really appreciate everything you're doing. And to clarify, a bunch of people have been asking, Jethro, how can you be afraid of a dairy cow? And let me tell you, you're going to tell me you aren't going to look in those big vacant eyes and tell me that there's nothing to be afraid of. A 1,200-pound vacant-eyed animal Not for me. Not for me.
Well, Jethro, thanks for that. The next time I run into a dairy cow, I'll remember what you just said. For our listeners, can you tell us what's on your bench?
Yeah, well, right now I'm working on the Tomoya Walker Bulldog, and I've just got the rattle can out and just got a base coat on it, and working on them decals, or decals as my friends over the pond like to say. And working right now, trying a little bit of cigarette ash and Maybelline mud texture. Don't tell Mrs. Jethro I'm using her foundation, but well, we're going to see where this one pans out. We're going to see where it goes.
Well, Jethro, we just want to thank you for stopping by. We had a lovely interview with you last week. Such an educational experience. We learn something every time that you come in the room. Any parting shots for our listeners?
Well, just remember, it's not about how many models you got, but how many you build. And so God bless y'all.
Thank you so much.